Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another round of the UKSimRacing community's GT3 League Season 9, as brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC, known as iRacing. And today marks round 4 of 8 in the championship, as our drivers have arrived here in France for the Circuit de Nevers Magny-Cours circuit. Known more colloquially as Magny-Cours in reference to one of the two towns that the circuit is situated between, with the other being the town of Nevers. This is a circuit that consists of 17 corners and 2.74 miles of intense racing performance, whereby our drivers will be tested to the absolute limit when it comes to pinpoint precision. A circuit which has played host to many a series in past years and even to today, ranging from Formula 1 all the way through to the Fanatec GT World Challenge Series. It is a circuit that is typified for lacking overtaking opportunities, instead putting priority on track position and also the ability to use strategy to your advantage. Given the fact that this circuit has seen many a strategic blunder arise and also many strategic masterclass arise, including the magical 4-stop achieved by Michael Schumacher back in, if I remember correctly, 2006. This circuit will definitely put our drivers' nuances to the test when it comes to knowing when to come into the pits and when to battle hard for position. For of course, this is our first endurance round of the series, where we'll be seeing our race go from 45 minutes all the way up to 90 minutes, and with an all-new tyre model for our GT3 drivers going into, of course, this season of racing, plus also a 45% starting fuel tank. That means we're going to see plenty of strategic options available, and will it be 2, 3 or 4 stops that see our drivers ranking today? We'll find out all that and more shortly, but as we get underway, welcome to you all. You're tuning live via the official UKSimRacing YouTube channel, and if you are tuning right now and you're not subscribed to the channel, then do so if you do desire to do so, for the simple reason it enables you to stay up to date with all of our latest broadcasts. But as our drivers get ready to get underway in approximately 14 minutes time, allow me to introduce myself as your host and commentator. My name is Paul Walsh, also known as TX1 or Brit of the Spit, depending on what media you follow me on, and I'll be bringing you all of your racing action tonight and indeed for the remainder of the series that continues to ask the question across our Pro, Elite and AM classes: who is the master of the GT3 class car? Well, in terms of our schedule so far and what still lies in wait, we look to our calendar, and we can see that today we are in France on the Magny-Cours circuit on the 29th of January, and in the run-up to today and really at the end of the first half of the season, we started all the way back in round number 1 on the 8th of January in the sprint race round opener at Silverstone. The high downforce circuit seeing many a driver go full attack mode from corner to corner with a medium speed and high speed sweepers, but in the end it was the rise of many a name, including Daniel Thomas in the elite class, and also we got to see the rivalry between Darren Sharples and his peers in the AM class, with Aaron McGregor taking the season opening win at Silverstone in the AM class. We then made our way across the Atlantic Ocean to Daytona Road Course, the precursor to 24 Hours of Daytona in iRacing, and of course that's the precursor to 24 Hours of Daytona in the real world of motorsport, which has just concluded earlier this evening, approximately 1 hour and 10 minutes ago. But to the point there, on the 15th of January, we saw our drivers all hard pressed around the Daytona Road Course in the state of Florida, and it was the photo finish between Ryan Moles and Daniel Thomas in the elite class, whereby Ryan Moles was to take the win. Wind on forward a week, we made our way to Italy last time out on what was the 22nd of January for our third sprint race in succession, and that was at the circuit of Monza, the Temple of Speed, and there we got to see the Monza Masterclass, the hero of the day in the elite class, none other than Ignea Motorsport's Håkon Grebstad, who left everybody in his wake and in his dust as he broke away in the McLaren MP4 12C to leave everybody questioning where on earth did that come from. Indeed, many wondered about that, but it wasn't just about him, it was also about in the Pro class, Alex Gaines bringing home another win, and the BMW M4 driver really on his way in the championship standings. And in the AM class, it was the rise of the Tiki Simsport driver of Michael Warrington, who in the Ferrari really made it work on the Ferrari's home soil. But as we enter Magny-Cours today to wrap up the first half of the season, next week of course we'll have a break week before we return on the 12th of February to kick off the second half of the season with round number 5 at the Nürburgring Grand Prix circuit. There in the sprint we'll get things back underway, and it'll be the question of who has been able to carry that momentum for the first half of the season into the second half, and who is able to turn around any misfortune they had in the first half and really get things back on the fresh start. Then after the German circuit, we'll make it away to Australia for the Bathurst circuit, also known more formally as Mount Panorama Raceway, and that'll be on the 19th of February there. It'll be a trip up and down the mountain, and just after the official iRacing 12 Hours of Bathurst event on what will be the preceding weekend. And then for our penultimate round, we make our way over to Brazil, and in the South American continent, we'll be attacking the Interlagos circuit, or the Autodromo Jose Carlos Pache, on the 26th of February, and what is expected to be an absolute thriller of a round, and no championship would be complete without championship drama at Brazil, either in the season finale or the round before the finale. And then speaking of the finale, in round number 8 we make our way to the United States of America once again for the classic Sebring circuit on the 5th of March, and we bring it all to the close with the second of our 2 endurance race rounds. But what a schedule it's been so far, and we've still got plenty to look forward to. As we look forward to tonight, our circuit for today, of course, is the Circuit de Nevers Magny-Cours, the Grand Prix layout, and located in Magny-Cours, France. This circuit, as you can see from the circuit map provided us by iRacing.com, thank you to them for implementing this circuit in their absolutely brilliant simulator for the simple reason we've waited to see this circuit for a very long time, which you can see from the circuit map on screen. Two-dimensional, of course, it doesn't quite show the elevation changes, but this circuit is quite flat compared to a good number of circuits on the international scale, and therefore it's all about the corners here and also the straights. For as our drivers make their way across the start-finish line down towards turn number 1 into the Grande Curve or the Grande Courbe, they'll come through turns 1 and 2, the double left apex, before trail breaking the way into Estoril corner at turn number 3. Now you may be thinking, isn't Estoril the name of another circuit around the world? Well, you would be correct, and indeed a number of corners at this circuit modelled after equivalent corners at other major circuits across the globe, including Estoril, also the Nürburgring in Germany, also Imola in Italy, and you can see there as well Adelaide at turn number 5, the Australian circuit, and therefore this circuit really binds together its own unique complexes alongside some other circuits and creates a very technical circuit with it. But as our drivers make the way through Estoril, the long right handle, it's all about finding your apex point and getting back on the throttle to carry your speed on out. They'll need to get it right, of course, because they'll make their way onto the Gulf Straight through the kink of turn number 4 in the long charge down towards Adelaide. We'll see our drivers reach their maximum possible speed before slamming onto the brakes and down into the hairpin at turn number 5, and that's where we could see quite the concertina effect on lap number 1. Emerging there unscathed, they'll power their way through the kink of 6 and head up towards the Nürburgring chicane at turns 7 and 8, and as they make their way out of turn number 8, they'll head into the long left-hander of 180 degrees, whereby they'll come through the left-hander. It will take them back on themselves through turn number 9, and through the kink of 10 they'll emerge up for 11 and into Imola chicane at turns 12 and 13. A very tricky chicane because our drivers will make their way downhill, but have to clip 2 curves as they make their way back uphill through turn number 13 and bring themselves up to scratch for the Chateau de Haut at turn number 14 there. Another hairpin style corner, and a very tricky corner at that because it's a right angle corner off of the hard apex, and as they make their way out of turn number 14, it's then the run down the chicane straight into turns 15, 16 and 17. Known in full as the complex de Lycée, as they break their way into Lycée hairpin at turn number 15, and it's the final chicane that gets it all done before they make their way across the timeline to go once again. And also you can see there the pit entry is on the entry into turns 16 to 17, and therefore that does also add a degree of complexity given the fact that drivers battling, well, some may be peeling into the pits and wanting to fly into the pits, whereas others will be braking for the chicane and they'll need to work that out. But speaking of working things out, they'll need to work things out within the rules, of course, and you can see that we do have a slight tweak to the rules as of today, but let's take you through the full rule set, of course. And we can see here in terms of car setup, it's an open setup series. Our drivers bring the setups of their choosing to each and every round, and car fuel loads are restricted to 45% for all races. Now with that in mind, we are expecting that this race is going to be split between a 2 and a 3 stop as a result, whereby our fuel conservationists would go for the 2 stop, and they also look to preserve the tyres as much as possible. Meanwhile, with regards to our 3 stoppers, they'll be going full attack, and indeed many of you will be getting flashbacks to what was season 7 at round number 12 in the season finale at Road Atlanta, and the battle of strategy between Si Anthony and Sam Congreve in the gold class, which came down to the more aggressive strategy in the end, winning on out. Well, will we see a similar thing like that tonight? That will be the big question. In qualifying, we're sticking with a lone qualifying format from the sprint races, whereby all of our drivers will head to the circuit on their own. They'll have an isolated instance of the circuit where they're able to put in their laps, and they have 15 minutes to put in their laps, or alternatively 4 fast laps, whichever concludes first. Now in the endurance race, the rules are not too much different, but given the nature of this circuit and given the fact the automated iRacing rolling start sequence means that the lead driver will start going into the chicane, our drivers have been told that the race will commence via a double file rolling start, but the leader can only go on the start-finish straight. Now that is in red there. One other thing we should point out, that our drivers are not permitted to overtake until they've crossed the start-finish line. That's something which has been clarified as of today, and what that means is our drivers must stay in column or file, so if they're on the right-hand side of the double formation, they must stay over to the right hand side before they cross the start finish line, and then they can go on the offensive, and that is due to safety concerns with the fact that our drivers will be starting the race through the final chicane if they're in the mid pack, and everybody needs the opportunity to make their way on through there. Indeed, if any of you have raced on iRacing in any of the official series going through that chicane, and you'll know when the race starts through there, it can get quite hectic. But we're hoping to mitigate that where possible, and there are no mandatory pit stop requirements for this race. Now, it does sound a bit contradictory given the fact there's a lot of strategy involved here, and we are expecting pit stops, but what that means essentially is that our drivers are not required to come into the pits at any point and take specific amounts of fuel on or change particular tyres. They come in when necessary, and that opens up the strategy ever further. No fast repairs are available, and the driver shall receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 25 or more instance points. That's been raised up from 17, and of course that is to respect the fact that the race is longer. But for no longer will we wait to go over to our live pictures, and as we see our drivers making the way on around here once again, well, let's bring up our information for tonight with regards to your schedule times in Greenwich Mean Time, that's GMT, or Universal Coordinated Time at UTC. Our schedule is as follows. in just over 5 minutes time, we'll be heading into our qualifying session. That'll be at 8 o'clock this evening for 15 minutes, where all our drivers will be out in their isolated instances of the circuit, as we said earlier, looking to pit in the best possible laps, and then we'll make our way straight to the grid for the feature race, which will be kicking off at approximately 8:15 this evening, and it'll be 90 minutes of racing action, double the duration, with all the strategy thrown in. And who will be the master of Magny-Cours? That will be the question that all of our drivers will have on their minds, and they'll all be looking to try and stake their claim to it. And indeed, it is definitely going to be a challenging one for our drivers for the simple reason that this circuit is relatively new to iRacing, and it is one that is not necessarily raced on that often by drivers, and a lot of them have had to learn it in the build-up to tonight. But as we get ready to go here, we do look to our fastest drivers out of the circuit at the moment. That's our elite class, of course. And we see Matthew Crisp here making his way down towards turn number 5 into Adelaide currently. And the privateer having a good run, of course, at Monza last time out. And as he makes his way out of turn number 5 here in the Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo, he'll be looking to follow that up once again today with a great result. Now, going into tonight, so we may be asking the question, well, have we had any changes of driver classes or any new drivers introduced to the series today? Well, we've only had one slight change going into today, and that regards Dan Blackwell, the 488 Ferrari driver in the Ferrari 488 GT3 Evo. Quite synonymous there with regards to driver door number and the number of the car, as he makes his way into turn number 14 there. And the key thing about him is, you'll notice he has been promoted from the Pro class to the Elite class, and that has been based on his performance in the round at Monza. And as he makes his way on down towards the complex till I see at the moment, we look forward to seeing how Blackwell gets on in the Elite class here, and good luck to, of course, taking the big step up. But I think he will do very well indeed. He showed a lot of tenacity at Monza, and he'll be looking to do it ever more today. Now, as he makes his way on through the chicane then, goes on to another lap. We do have an attendance currently of approximately 47 drivers, and it is going to be a very packed field here at the Magny-Cours circuit. And we do say hello to Medmo there in the YouTube chat, who says, "Bonjour, Paul." And, well, my French beyond that is not too good to us. I know bonjour means hello, but I do apologise there. But I do see him also saying, I'm expecting some flying GT3s through the last chicane. Indeed, our drivers will be attacking those curves as much as possible. And you can imagine we will see some drivers go upwards to 2 wheels, if not less than that. But whilst being one driver who will be hoping not to make it 2 wheels all the way on through, as he comes on through the chicane here, Sean Landia, the American, for UKSimRacing Kimmy coming on through there in the McLaren MP4 12C, as he heads across the timing line here. We're at just over 3 minutes before he heads into qualifying. Right now, the elite driver down in P13 in class. But when we talk about drivers in class who are right at the top of their game, Nathan Foster is the fastest of our elite drivers at the moment. And UKSimRacing Blue Audi R8 LMS, as he makes his way out of turn number 3 and down the Gulf Straight on a 36.167. And well, only 110 faster than Damien Lobbit. Is definitely looking close at the very top of the class. But it's not just about the elite. We could also talk a little bit about the pros. And we see John Eddowes here making his way down towards turn number 5, the UKSimRacing Kimmy driver in the BMW AM4. And as he rolls his way off the brakes, we can definitely see here right now he's looking to go for gold as well, given the fact he's only a 10th off the Paul Smith. And well, Paul Smith, the fastest of our pro drivers at the moment, he's a Motorsport driver on a 36.746. Meanwhile, Eddowes only a 10th off there and not too far away. But as he makes his way down towards turn number 10 there, coming into 180 at turn number 9 firstly, and you flip the car out before going for the kink at turn number 10. And with BMW M4 will go very well in this race, not for the reason it's strong at the Magny-Cours circuit necessarily, but it is one of the most consistent cars when it comes to tyre degradation and also stability over long races. It's a very forgiving car compared to some of its peers, and perhaps the least forgiving cars are the Audis, of which Aaron McGregor has currently gone fastest in the AM class at a 37.280 in the Audi R8. But meanwhile, he has also got Darren Sharples, who will be vying to try and pick up his first win of the season. And would you believe it, the 777 driver, despite the fact he is leading the AM Championship going into tonight by a considerable margin of what was previously almost 10 points, now 2 points with drop scores in effect going into tonight. Well, the change of Darren Sharples will simply be, can he finally pick up that maiden win that has eluded him for so long? He was very close to it, of course, at Silverstone, but he was beaten to the post by Aaron McGregor due to a mistake right towards the end. It was the same at Daytona Road Course, where he was denied, and it went to Adrian Kukulas. And then last time out at Monza, it didn't go his way. It went to what was instead the UKSimRacing driver of Michael Warrington, who you see here making his way down towards turn number 15. And Warrington is one of the big names here today in the AM class, who were waiting to see whether the momentum from Monza can be carried through. So he looked absolutely unstoppable at Monza, and right now he's gone from Italy to France, and therefore he's no longer in the Ferrari's home territory, but he'll be making to look at his territory as he heads up towards turn at number 1. as he comes on down there. And thank you, Medmo, for clarifying with regards to what you're saying earlier. So the Porsche Cup races here the other week were fantastic, very unpredictable, and indeed we are expecting there to be quite a bit of unpredictability here, given the fact that the opening sequence of 3 corners are very tight on corner apex, and also there's only really one racing line which all our drivers will be fighting hard for, and that is going to be something which all our drivers will have on their minds with regards to trying to place themselves as best as possible. And qualifying, of course, being so critical here, where you can imagine all our drivers will be worrying about the fact if they qualify out of position, they may find themselves in a little bit of a pickle when it comes into going green for that opening lap. But we see Stephen Masters here, the TT Supersport Toa driver, making his way at turn at number 14, and down the hill he goes towards the complex to light C through the chicane straight. Well, Masters here currently in at P15, but we can't read too much into that at the moment. And look at that in the elite class, the top 15 separated by just over 1 second, and Dan Blackwell not too far over that either. And I think right now a lot of drivers really keeping it in reserve. I think this is going to be the closest qualifying session we have had all season so far, and that's a bold statement given how close qualifying has been, as the Masters coming on through there, and all the drivers are made to go back to the pits. It's time for qualifying. So now as qualifying gets underway and our drivers get themselves set, we do just take a brief moment, ladies and gentlemen, to remind you that if you have been a long-time follower of UK Sim Racing and you've always enjoyed the race and ever wondered how you can support UK Sim Racing, did you know there is a quick way to do so via our affiliates? For UK Sim Racing is affiliated with multiple Sim Racing and real-world motorsport companies, including Sweater Meta, Sim Racing Coaching, Race Anywhere and Demon Tweaks. And if you do head to our website, uksimracing.co.uk today, which will shortly appear on your screen, where you'll be able to head to a page which is pointed towards our discount codes and affiliates, and you can see that here as we bring it up on the screen. And it looks, if you look down the bottom left hand corner there, you'll see a button which is discount stroke affiliate links, and if you do click on that button, which is slightly obscured off page there, you'll be taken to the following page on our website, and there are the logos of our affiliates, and if you click on any of those, you'll be taken to a page where you can make purchases which will result in discounts for you as the consumer and a kickback to us at UK Sim Racing. But because we are a non-profit organisation, it means all of our affiliate earnings shall be invested back into the community to fund future series, including future renditions of the GT3 League, the Porsche Cup, and other series that we have got planned for 2023. Indeed, we've got plenty planned here, and every penny goes a long way in supporting those. Additionally, some of our affiliates provide discount codes which are available in the UK Sim Racing Discord, so if you're not part of our Discord, then why not join today? It also sets a requirement if you ever want to race with us, and do remember a little purchase could go a long way in supporting UK Sim Racing. Well, I can tell you right now, something that is big that can go a long way, and that is a huge qualifying lap, and it could see a driver take pole position in class to set themselves up for success when they do go racing tonight. Well, as we see Håkon Grebstad making his way down towards Complex LIC at the moment, heading down towards turn at number 15, getting himself all composed here. We're not going to quite jump on board for his first flying lap for the simple reason he'll be looking to try and get the tyres in, but as he comes on through, definitely one of the drivers that everyone will be looking to today for the simple reason he was unstoppable last time out, and he'll be looking to make it 2 out of 2 wins on the bounce. Meanwhile, we look to Eden Frazina here as he makes his way on down. And of course the driver with that bad luck at Daytona leading the way by a considerable margin, but a major technical issue and incident combined together took apart what was looking to be the perfect race at Daytona, and he's looking to recover from that tonight in the Porsche 911 at GT3R as he heads across the timing line there and makes his way into turn number 1. We're expecting the Porsche to be quite strong here at this circuit. The Audi does seem to be one lap pace car, but it also does seem to be a bit of a tyre monster with regards to taking its tyres to pieces over the course of the race duration. But as we do see our driver making his way on through here, in terms of the weather for today, we can see on the right hand side of your screen their track temperature at the moment, 28 degrees centigrade. Meanwhile, we can see, in fact, that's 26 degrees centigrade. They might need an eye test at this point, but we can also see with regards to the ambient temperature, 21 degrees centigrade. And with that combined, it's not too hot at the moment. It's a relatively moderate temperature. That temperature will come up as we go racing, and therefore tyre wear could be a concern, particularly for the Audis and also for the likes of the Ferraris and the Porsches. Meanwhile, BMW M4 and also Mercedes drivers may just be able to leverage that to their advantage, given the tyre degradation rate is not significant on their cars. As we see, Frazina gets it wrong, coming on through the chicane, a bit too aggressive on the entry there into the Nürburgring chicane, and goes straight to the wall. And this circuit does bite very hard when you are over aggressive from corner to corner, as we see Chris Eddersford here making his way down into turn number 14, rolling on through there in the Pro Class Audi for UK Sim Racing as he comes on out. But Frazina definitely having a difficult start to his day, as we say hello there to Simon Anthony and the YouTube chat. Indeed, if you're tuning in right now, and you haven't said hello, do not be shy. Feel free to say hi. We can see the chat and let us know who you're cheering on and also who you're expecting to potentially take the win tonight. As we see here, Edison heading across the timeline. What's going to be his first lap on the board there? We jumped up to visual pole in the Pro Class at a 37.130, but we are expecting plenty more lap times to come on in due course. And speaking of times to come on in very shortly, well, we are currently on the verge of seeing some laps come together, including Sam Congreve here, making his way down for iRacing at red as he roars his way down to Lacey, as he heads on down the hill there towards turn number 15 and getting ready to go onto the anchors. And as he comes on through the right-hander in the number 9 Audi, we're going to jump on board here for a flying lap. He's making his way on through the chicane there, bringing up the dashboard in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen and shifting up through the gears. He crosses the timeline, goes on to another lap of 36.478 is what he's just set. He's going to try and beat it as he comes into Curva Grande there and absolutely flat out all the way through. And now trail braking down into Estoril corner from 5th to 4th down to 3rd. Lets the car go deep initially and then gets back on the throttle as the nose bites and powers on out as he makes his way onto the Gulf Straight. A really aggressive opening portion to the circuit, and now it's all about the calm before the storm as he comes through the Gulf Kink and makes his way towards Adelaide. Looking to his left-hand side here for his brake mark, he'll look for what is there, the 100-metre white line, and as he brakes down to first gear from top speed, he now powers on out here and heads up towards the Nürburgring chicane. Going in towards the Kinker 6, completely flat out. In fact, he backs off there. Congreve, he's not happy with how that lap started, so that's going to bring our lap to an abrupt halt. But meanwhile, Jeff Griffiths heads on around here, and well, we're going to jump back on board with Griffiths very shortly in the Pro Class here to continue the story as he makes the round down. But definitely Congreve there deciding it was not the right start to his lap. But meanwhile, we jump on board here for our Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo driver, and he's currently P10 in the Pro Class. He powers on out of the Adelaide hairpin and carries on from where our elite driver left off. He's making his way up towards turn number 6 here, flat out up into 4th gear, getting ready to go up into 5th as he makes his way into Nürburgring chicane, drops to 4th, downshift there just to settle the car, and as he makes his way into 180, braking at the end of the entry curve there, and about 50 metres of corner apex, and just gets the car stopped in time. That's as late as you're ever going to brake as he comes through 10, flat out now, and building up the speed once again through 11, and getting ready to go into Imola. And here's the rise before the fall. Look for the dip in the road as he brakes his way in, drops down the gear, lifts off the throttle, and as he makes his way through 13, back on the power, and now up towards turn 40, he goes into Chateau de Haut, and as he rolls his way for the right-hander, takes a bit of apex curve there to help with the rotation as he comes out of 14, and now down the hill he charges. Only 3 more corners to go here as he charges on down the hill, getting ready for his braking zone, looking to his left-hand side for his marker, braking at the 100-metre ball, coming all the way down to 2nd gear, hits the apex curve, and as he rolls his way on out, now straight line between the 2 apexes of the chicane, battering the car over there, the suspension taking a hammering, but it can take it to be fair, and as he comes across the timeline, what's it going to be for Griffiths? 37.437, he gains 2 places in class, moves up to P21 overall, a nice lap there to conclude our roll on board, and as he makes his way for Estoril once again, I think he'll feel as though there's a bit more time to go, as meanwhile, Peter Cox goes purple in Sector 2, and he goes P2 in the Pro Class there, and that's purple in class, and that was with his 2nd flying lap as he parks it up. And I think a lot of drivers deciding to invest today in simply putting fuel in for 2 fast laps before returning to the pit lane. They are gambling, a lot of drivers, as we do see Adrian Kukulas here making his way down towards turn number 15, gradually bringing himself in right now as the AM driver, 4 tenths off of Aaron McGregor, the fastest of our AMs by 4 tenths right now, and that is absolutely gargantuan in terms of that gap when you consider how close it has been the course of this season. But McGregor finding some time that others have not, as we see Kukulas crossing the line and putting himself onto a new fast lap as he rolls his way left into right. But as he heads on down, meanwhile we can see there and the battle for P2 in the AM class, it's equal there between Kukulas and also Sharples all the way down to the 1000th, and well spotted there Medmo with regards to that as we say hello to Carl McGuire in the YouTube chat. Hope you're doing well, Carl, and well, that goes to show how close it is, and well for Kukulas it's all about tens of thousandths of a second. That is the difference between him being P2 and P3 in the class as he makes his way into the Adelaide hairpin. He all wants to try and find a little bit more of an advantage because it could be in the end 1,000th that differs the 2 of them as they make the way on through in the remainder of this qualifying session. But speaking of close margins at the moment, it's not just about the AMs as we look up to Damien Lobbit, the fastest of our elite drivers and current overall pole sitter on a 36.03. He is only 7.5 hundredths faster than Håkon Grebstad, the McLaren driver, who for Ignition Motorsport right now really trying to take the fight to Damien Lobbett, but Lobbett really coming together as he gets a poor run coming out of what is Estoril corner, and he backs it off there. He's going to go again, but he's not going to have much more time. And then we do look to the Protect Motorsport driver, Daniel Thomas, championship leader going into this round by a margin of 8 points. And as he makes his way down for turn number 5 at the moment, P5 on the grid it would be if we wrapped up qualifying immediately. And well, for Thomas, I don't think he'll be too upset by this, given the fact he's only 2.5 tenths of the fastest lap in class. But again, it shows you from week to week, well, Thomas has been Mr. Consistent in the class, but he's not necessarily the fastest man out there from track to track, and therefore it does open up the possibility that we could see a new driver stand at the top of not just the podium today, but also the standings, depending on which way it goes and who goes their own way with regards to picking up those major results. And it'll be critical, of course, to get a good qualifying lap to really have those opportunities from the outset, because falling backwards into a battle on the opening lap could take drivers out of the fight late on in the race. As we see Thomas rolling his way on through turn number 14 and down towards 15 he goes. Well, we do have some drivers who have already completed their qualifying sessions effectively, in the fact they've only done 3 fast laps and then gone to the pits, which means they will not be permitted a full lap. But speaking of drivers here, still got some time to go. Aaron McGregor, the fastest man in the AM class right now, on a 37.126. He is P19 overall, and he is sandwiched in amongst a wide variety of pro drivers, to give you an idea. In fact, right now, if we look at the overall standings on the left-hand side of your screen, you'll see that Aaron McGregor has completely segregated himself from the rest of his peers by the best part of what is 10 places on the grid. McGregor is absolutely on fire right now. Well, the fire from Silverstone has not subsided. It was residing there in his heart, and he's definitely right now letting it out as he makes his way through 180 as he comes through 9 into 10. This is phenomenal stuff from McGregor, and worse, they all factor together. The same could be said of Paul Smith in P11 there, our pro provisional pole sitter, who does only have one elite driver between himself and second place in the pro class of Peter Cox, but that'll be enough to give him a bit of an advantage, as we see here our driver of McGregor making his way into turn number 14. Now as he rolls his way on through the right hand there in the AMR car and heading up towards turn number 15, the Aaron McGregor Racing Machine, the privateer outfit, as he heads on down the hill. Well, we do have some drivers who are still looking to put in some strong laps, including Dion Wren in the all-black Audi as he makes his way through turn number 14. And coming on through the right-hander there and heading up towards 15 he goes. And well, most of our drivers have decided to end their qualifying session early, as we said earlier, and we do have most of our drivers now in the pit lane, having completed 4 or 3 laps, but we have got a couple still lingering on round. We've still got 4 minutes to go, and therefore it does start to create this little bit of an anxiety fall into on the heads of drivers in terms of those who completed their qualifying sessions, as Dion Wren jumps up to P16 overall. And where does that fit him into the class standings? That puts him up to P3 in the pro class with 36.916, only 3.5 tenths off of what is Smith. Meanwhile, Daniel Thomas jumps to the top of the standings, and I think coming out the corner gets it horrifically wrong, but he's jumped up there onto a provisional pole, and I think that is it for Thomas, for the simple reason that nobody right now inside the top 10, in fact in the top 7 we should correct ourselves, because we do have Nathan Foster, P8 in the elite class right now, but Daniel Thomas has left it as late as possible to his final lap. As Foster decides to park it up, he's done enough, and well, with that, Thomas right now on a 36.007, almost hitting a 35. Only was near 13 thousandths ahead of Damien Lobbett, and I don't think we're going to get any responses. Chris Edison goes P3 in the pro class. The AMs are all said and done, as we're to understand it, and well, not too many more laps to go. In fact, I think we've only got 2 laps left on circuit. One is for Chris Edison, he's got 1 lap to go, and the same for Alex Hill in the elite class. And Alex Hill right now really does need to find some time as he makes his way on through there, as we see the livery loading for the UKSimRacing driver as he heads into turn number 14, heading into the Chateau corner, as right now P17, and the only other driver there currently unlisted a lap time is Si Anthony, will not be taking part in this race as we're to understand it. Instead, he's watching from the sidelines today, and well, indeed he's in the YouTube chat there if you want to say hello to Si. But right now, as Hill makes his way on through, he really does need to find at least 3 tenths. So he will not want to be starting from the very back of the elite group of the grid as he makes his way to the line. He loses it on the final corner, he slides across. It's an improvement to 37.294, but it's not enough to take him up from P17, and that's his qualifying session said and done, and now the only lap left out there is the lap of Chris Eddersford as he makes his way down towards turn number 14, but he gets it wrong. The car lets loose, and that is qualifying complete, ladies and gentlemen. And well, in the end, as you can see there, it's Daniel Thomas who takes overall an elite pole by only what is in the end 2 thousandths over Damien Lobbett, with then your pro pole sitter of Paul Smith by almost 2 tenths over Peter Cox. And in the AM class, it's Aaron McGregor who takes pole by 4 tenths in the end. A fantastic qualifying session in the AM class. Aaron McGregor stringing it all together, and this is how the top 35 line up on the grid when we filter all the classes back in amongst one another. And you can see there McGregor 8 places clear of next driver in the AM class of Adrian Kukulas, and he has given himself a huge opportunity here today to become our first repeat winner in the AM class. Meanwhile, in the pro class, Paul Smith has put Daniel Lee between himself and Peter Cox, so he will have one elite driver who gives him a bit of a safeguard there, but otherwise the elite drivers for the most part line up together on the grid in a very clustered pack, but they do have a couple of drivers who are outliers there, including Dan Blackwell down in P19 overall, and Alex Hill in P26, and Stephen Masters in P23 between the two of them. But it's absolutely so close between all of them. And as we do see a number of you talking there about the fact that we do believe that Daniel Thomas went sideways across the timeline to take that pole lap, and that's why he was in the wall, in a similar fashion to what we saw only moments ago from Alex Hill. Well, we've still got a minute left here, as I think we've got a couple of drivers just safely making the way on the round back to the pit lane at the moment, as see Peter Cox making his way on down, but he has already completed 4 flying laps, so this lap will not count as he comes on through. Well, definitely it has been a qualifying session to remember, as we say hello there to Paul Lucille. Also, we say hello there to J Wings, also to Slashed Noodles and to Lactus. And well, welcome to you all. And well, as Peter Cox makes his way on through the Imola chicane here, we'll start in P14 on the grid, P2 in class. He will be very pleased with how this qualifying session has gone in the 68 car. And well, with the position of all drivers here, it is so close in general in all 3 classes. I think qualifying, whilst it's going to be important, we could definitely see a huge shake-up in the order after the first half an hour, for the simple reason that the pace is so close, and it has been fine margins here that have made the difference. But will it be fine margins in the race? When we head to the grid, let's find out. So as our drivers line up on the grid, this is how they line up for round number 4. This is round 4 of the GT3 League Season 9, is brought to you by UKSimRacing here today on iRacing at the Magny-Cours circuit. It is Daniel Thomas who takes overall and elite pole position there by 2 hundredths over Damien Lobbett. The Protect Motorsport driver putting it on pole once again, head of the Symphony Esports black driver. On the second row, it's Circuit de Nevers Håkon Grebstad, joined by UKSimRacing's red Sam Congreve. And on the third row, it's the privateer of Matthew Crisp, ahead of the privateer of Dean Powell. On row number 4, we have UKSimRacing Kimmy's Sean Valandia, joined by UKSimRacing Blues Nathan Foster. And it's Joe Newman from UKSimRacing at red, who is joined on the 5th row by Protect Motorsport's Ryan Moles. That is your top 10 all elite drivers. On the 6th row, we have Josh Fletcher there, the privateer, who is joined by the pro pole sitter from Ignium Motorsport of Paul Smith. Congratulations to Paul Smith on making it pole position. And then on the 7th row, we have the pairing of Daniel Lee, the privateer in the Ferrari, in the elite class, joined by the pro driver of Peter Cox from UKSimRacing. On row number 8, it is Ryan Davies, who is joined by Chris Eddersford there, and they are followed up behind them by what is the UKSimRacing Corporate driver of Martin Tin, who lines up behind his Car Marte teammate, and then Dion Wren takes slot 18 on the grid behind the UKSimRacing driver Chris Eddersford. On row number 10, we should say, not row number 20, we're getting ahead of ourselves there. Dan Blackwell, the privateer, who is joined by Alex Gaines. Gaines not having a strong qualifying session today, but to be fair, when Gaines has a difficult qualifying session, we can expect miracles from him in the race. Indeed, we only have to look back to Daytona and also Silverstone to see how far he can come through the grid in quick succession. Outside the top 20, on row number 11, we have the privateer of Jeff Griffiths, who is joined by the Ampole sitter of Aaron McGregor, fellow privateer there. And then we have Stephen Masters from UKSimRacing Tower, joined by UKSimRacing Kimmy's John Eddowes on the 12th row. On row number 13, it's Edward Knight from Ignium Motorsport Spark, who is joined by Alex Hill for UKSimRacing, as we see there from the blimp view. All the drivers lined up on the grid in absolutely beautiful fashion. And then behind them on the 14th row, it is UKSimRacing Blues Nathan Scott, who is joined by fellow pro driver of Joel Amos from Symphony Esports White. We then have Jaco Boscher from Ignium Motorsport Spark on the 15th row, joined by the AM privateer of Adrian Kukulas, who is second in the AM class. That shows you the delta between himself and the AM pole sitter of McGregor. And on row number 16, outside the top 30, we have Darren Sharples, the privateer, joined by fellow AM driver Frank Klein from UKSimRacing Copper. Then on row number 17, we have UKSimRacing's Mark Johnson, joined by Brock Freites from UKSimSport. And looking further on back there, Jack Bullen on the 18th row for UKSimSport Kimmy, joined by Tom Farr, the privateer in P36. Then onto what is our 19th row, we have what is there, in fact, coming onto our, in fact, it is our 19th row there. It is TT Simsport Car Martes Michael Warrington, joined by Old Dudes and Cars is Daniel Pays, and then completing our 20th row is AJ Garcia for Team Zor, joined by TT Simsport Cobra's Simon Hartley. And Garcia will definitely be hoping that he has a happier day today after the difficulties he's had last time out at Monza. On row 21, it's Richard Curie for Team Zor, joined by Thomas Barjuk from the privateer outfit there in P42. And on row 22, we have Eden Frazina, joined by Matt Maddox, the privateer ahead of the BDM racing driver. And as we continue our way on down just a little bit further there, on row number 23, we have the privateer of James Connolly, joined by Ben Watkinson, P46 there, the privateer. And then on our final row, we will have, starting in P47 effectively, with Simon Anthony not participating today, it'll be the AM driver of Casper Brotner from Old Dudes and Cars, who'll be starting last but not least on the 24th row. But 24 rows, 47 drivers in attendance today, and was the attendance continues to be extremely high. All our drivers absolutely set and ready to go. We look to the front of the grid here as our drivers make the way on around, and the rolling start procedure will be getting underway in due course. We have got quite a bit of time as we do just reload our overlay there to make sure you get the circuit map in the top right corner of your screen. And well, we're having a full parade and pace lap today. It's not going to be a partial one, given the fact that this is our first endurance round of the season, and our drivers need to progress their way on around in a safe manner all the way out to the start finish line. We'll go racing at the start finish line, and it'll be Daniel Thomas who dictates the flow and the pace as we go to the green. And as we see there, many of you right now tuning in, absolutely enjoying sight. Anthony confirming to everyone in the chat with regards to the fact that drivers have been told to ignore the green flag at the start to avoid a pile-up at the chicane. And fingers crossed there that the message has gotten through, which I'm sure it has to all of our drivers, because they are all responsible and sensible. Well, Frank Klein here we jump on board with briefly in the TT Simsport Cobra BMW M4, starting down in what is the fourth row of the AM group, if you will. But as he makes his way in towards turn number 9, he'll be looking to try and come through the field as soon as possible, as he has Kukulis right in front in there, albeit faded in and out of existence for a brief moment. But I'm sure that will calm down and stabilise when we do get underway. But all of our drivers absolutely itching to go. It is beautiful to see such an intensely packed field here today at the Magny-Cours circuit, and now they are almost 2/3 of the way on around. And as we look a little bit further up the order here, everyone taking it easy. Chris Edison backing off quite significantly there, and the field staggering back as a result. He will be required to close on up over the course of the remainder of this double file formation lap. But as we look from the midfield up towards the front of the field, will Daniel Thomas coming on down here towards turn number 15. And I can tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that it's beautiful to see everybody here getting set to go for what is going to be 90 minutes of racing action. But can Daniel Thomas lead them all away and hold on to lead come the finish? There's going to be plenty of strategy on the cards, plenty of overtakes as well, and I'm sure there's going to be some drama thrown into the mix. And as they come on down now, the safety car will very shortly begin to peel off, and it'll be to Daniel Thomas to take us racing for 90 minutes of Magny-Cours. And it's lights out and away we go as Daniel Thomas goes on the start-finish line, and all of our drivers are required to hold position until they cross the line. But Thomas heads into turn number 1 as they come on down. We can see there Håkon Grebstad already trying to go on the offensive with Sam Congreve close behind. Meanwhile, we can see quite a bit of an opening in the pack already as everybody comes roaring on through the opening 2 corners, through the curb as they make the way on down. Mark Johnson meanwhile battling side by side with Darren Sharples. He can't quite find it as he has to back on out, but Sharples goes a bit overly deep as they come through the right-hand Vestival corner, and up they go towards turn number 5 in the long charge, and Matt Maddox as well on the offensive here versus James Connolly as Connolly goes a bit wide and outside. Maddox tries to look up the inside here, and it's battling in the AM class by the dozen as they make the way down towards Adelaide for the first time. But meanwhile, as they come on through Adelaide already, we can see we're in the battle towards turn 6 and 7 now. A lot of our drivers are already getting themselves set for position, but as they roll the way on through here, everybody trying to put themselves into nip and tuck and trying to find the way on through. Edward Knight here who looks up the inside of John Eddowes but can't find it into the Nürburgring chicane. But as he comes on down there, we look a little bit further back to Tom Farr and Daniel Pays, as right now Tom Farr also trying to make some moves here. He can't quite find it, the privateer, as he comes on through turn 6, 7 up into 8, 9 he goes, and onto the brakes. Meanwhile, we've got a driver who drops quite a way down the order, Sean Verlandia, going very slowly there as he comes out of 180. I wonder if he had a slowdown to serve, because we haven't had anything on our circuit radar to say that he's been involved in an incident. But meanwhile, speaking of incidents or things without incident, Dan Blackwell there on the apex curb, taking an absolute clattering with regards to the suspension. He tries to look for the move there versus Chris Edison, but he can't find it. And as they come down the hill in towards turn turn number 15 once again. Well, he's kept there for the time being as they make the way onto the brakes. But as they roll the way on through and now heading in towards the chicane. Meanwhile, behind we can see that Alex Gaines battling hard and McGregor goes wide. They're too wide through the chicane. And you see how their Gaines has to go on through. And McGregor, meanwhile, gets it wrong as meanwhile it's gone very, very wrong for a number of drives. They're coming out of the corner. And well, there's been a major incident. We're not quite sure exactly what's happened there. But Josh Fletcher definitely pointing the wrong way right now as everybody comes on through. Meanwhile, we can see the guy off circuit. That's Adrian Kukulas who catches the car, but he catches it the wrong way. And the privateer into the wall. It's all gone wrong for the 917 driver. It's a whack to the wall, but can he get it back and point it in the right direction? I think so, but it's definitely going to stunt his growth. And meanwhile, as he gets himself back up to speed, we look to the front of the field here, and after one lap of race, it's Thomas ahead of Lobbit, followed by Grebstad. That's the top three in the elite class. Then it's Congreve, followed by Chris, and then Dean Powell in P6, followed by Newman, Lee and Moles. Top 9 are all in the overall category, your elite class, and then we have your pro leader of what is Paul Smith from Ignition Motorsport, who's led from pole position so far, ahead of Sean Valandia, who is best the rest there in P11. Meanwhile, in the AM class, it is still Aaron McGregor who leads the AMs down in what is P27, albeit he's been passed by a good number of his pro counterparts, and therefore McGregor right now is battling for class rather than worrying about trying to keep pros between himself and his rivals. But as they make the way on through there, you can see a little bit further back that Ryan Moles trying to take a peek versus Ryan Davies. He can't quite find it at the moment in the battle for P10 in the elite class. He takes another look as they make the way into turn number 14, and these guys showing no signs of hesitating as they head on through. And indeed, I agree with you there, Medmo, it was a nearly flawless first lap, and the only thing that was flawed in the end was, I think, a couple of drives getting it slightly wrong, albeit right now most of our drives keeping it right. And speaking of keeping it right there, well, Martin Tilley keeping it on the right on the inside into turn number 15, can't find his way through for Tiki Sinscorpa as he chases after Peter Cox. Now as they make the way across the timeline and down towards turn number 1 once again in the long charge here, well, I think everybody's settling into fashion. As we said earlier, overtaking may come at a premium here, as meanwhile, speaking of things that come at a premium, that's not what you want to come at a premium. Dean Wren gets it wrong through turn 1, right onto the gravel and into the tyre barrier. It's a big hit to the side of the car, and well, that's going to upset the left-hand side suspension, also the aero package on that side. Can he get it back round and into the pits rather than have to be towed? He's going to try and limp it on around, but I think that car's wounded. He parks it up, and that may just be a tow to the pits. But meanwhile, speaking of drivers who are not towing right now, the only tow they're going to get is the draft of the car in front. Daniel Pays here, really having to fight hard versus Darren Sharples and Tom Farr. As Farr there, the pro driver that looks on behind Sharples, who's on the inside there of Pays. They break the way into Adelaide. Through the right-hander they go, and he gets it done to Sharples. And now, meanwhile, Farr and Adrian Garcia going toe-to-toe. Garcia trying to get the move here on Tom Farr. He can't quite find it. And Garcia, the team Zor driver, wants to come through for the simple reason he wants to be fighting with the pro drivers, not with, no, he wants to be fighting with the AM drivers, we should say, not with the one pro driver who's in between them all. But as they break the way down, Tom Farr here making a statement versus Pays up the inside, and with Sharples getting on through, Pays losing 2 places to the space of 4 corners. But as they come on through, we look a bit further up the road here to Nathan Foster, the elite driver who's trying to pick his way through the field after that spin, coming out of the chicane on what was the second lap. And as they make the way on around here, we will try and find out what exactly happened to Nathan Foster very shortly. And indeed, a number of drivers coming through that chicane. It did look as though many got it wrong there, and in fact we may just be able to get a replay back as of now. Well, this was coming on through, and in fact we get the tail end of it, and that is Foster and what is Josh Fletcher coming together. Now we're not exactly sure what's happening. In fact, we're going to get another replay. We see Aaron McGregor having to nudge his way through there. In fact, we now take a look back from Josh Fletcher, our focus, as they made the way through to the complex to Lycée. Well, as they made the way through, Fletcher lost the rear end, and the same for Foster. Both of them getting very greedy with the curb there, and on turn number 17, as a result, sending the car around, and McGregor having to take to the escape road, and with what we saw Foster pulling on forward, well, McGregor couldn't stop the car in time, and that's where the nudge came from. So as we return to live pictures, that explains what happened to both Fletcher and Foster in the elite class, and as they make the way on down once again, the racing continues here into turn number 5, as we see here Foster continues to try and pick his way through the order, but as he makes his way on down into Adelaide, he's trying to go on the offensive here versus Frank Klein, but Klein then knowing that he's got a good run out to the hairpin and doesn't have to worry for the time being. But as they make the way up towards Nürburgring once again here, 6 minutes past, we've still got plenty of time to go here, as our drivers really are trying to find some positions early on before they settle into the strategy phase. And indeed, some drivers may already be thinking more about strategy, but one driver who's not right now is this man, Protect Motorsport's Ryan Moles, who is continuing to gain his way up the order, but into that fault ladies and gentlemen. We've had an incident involving Mark Johnson, who is parked up there at 180, literally on the outside in the runoff area for the UK Sim Racing driver. What exactly has happened is the big question. We're also hearing that Simon Hartley's been involved in some sort of incident only moments ago. Well, we are going to take a look back and see what happened to Mark Johnson as he gets back up to speed. In fact, as he was coming on through the Nürburgring chicane, car looks composed there, onto the brakes, into 180. Does he simply lock up? Well, in fact, there's a little wobble there under brake. He lets the brake off, and in doing so, the car goes round on their scrippy runoff area with the dirt. But whilst he did that and got himself back up to speed, there was then an incident, we do believe, for Richard Curie, who was making his way out the corner. This is the Team Zor driver, and as he came out of turn number 10 into 11, he's got Fletcher behind, and as he made his way on through, I think that's Fletcher there, contact between the two of them, and it sent what was Curie on around, and Curie on a difficult man. That was Josh Fletcher, we can confirm, and the two drivers coming together there and not the way they wanted it to go. But as we return to live pictures, we do look back to Frank Klein, who right now battling with Nathan Foster, and I think for the AM driver, he's not going to fight this one too hard as they make their way down to Adelaide, who's going to hold the inside line. Keep in mind, of course, drivers are scoring points based on their class finishing position, not their overall position, but it doesn't stop them from fighting with other classes. But of course, it does mean that the main focus of your attention should be battling with your class peers. But right now, Klein definitely digging in the TT Central Copper driver as there's contact between himself and Foster. There's further contact there as Warrington gets into the touch. And in fact, that wasn't Warrington, that was, I believe, Brock Freights, in fact, as both drivers are running similar liveries. We couldn't quite discern the door number, but the TT Central driver in contact with the two getting it wrong. And Nathan Foster to the pits as well, multiple toes there, and it's gone wrong for the trio very quickly, and that is not good news for any of them. Meanwhile, as we look back to our drivers on circuit, Frank Klein gets himself back up to speed. I think that damage to the rear end has upset the car as he goes round, and a dodge there from what was Ben Watkinson, who just avoided the wayward TT Central Copper machine. But meanwhile, as we look up through the field, we've got plenty more going on. As goodness me, Stephen Masters is in the middle of the road looking the wrong way. Now, how on earth has that happened to the TT Central Tower driver? Well, the number 10 car's gone around. We're hearing that Edward Knight's been involved in the incident as well about the same time. I wonder if there's been something between the two of them. Well, Masters going on around. He's going to drop a long way down the order here. In fact, he drops all the way back to P30 overall, and that's Tom Farr, and also it's Daniel Page trying to go round him. Well, Farr gets on around, going around the far side of him, but meanwhile Pacers has to park him behind, going into Estoril corner and can't find a way on through as they come through turn number 3 and up towards turn number 5. But as they roll the way on through, well, we've definitely had a lot of replays at the moment. We focus back to some battling on circuit. Knight goes a bit overly deep there into Adelaide as he tried to look for the move up the inside of Nathan Scott, but in the end, by going a bridge too far under braking, he's not been able to make the position count. The Eagle Motorsport Spark driver now falling back a second off of Scott as he tries to fight his way to P7 in the pro class. But as he makes his way on through the Nürburgring chicane down towards 180, definitely we had a bit of a less dramatic open lap perhaps we anticipated, but we've had a lot of drama in these opening 10 minutes, and well, how the contrast is there as they make the way on through. I think that's just drivers really trying to get the hammer down here and then push it so hard, just finding mistakes. But as Knight tries to now redeem himself from the mistake he made only moments ago, we do get an opportunity to take a look at what happened at Stephen Masters. Well, this is in the rundown, and that is Knight behind them, as we're to understand. So they came under braking here into the complex to Lycée. Well, no, that was Knight ahead. Oh, goodness me. And, well, Knight had already gone around, and Masters in the end with nowhere to go. In fact, we take a look back at what happened to Edward Knight as he came down through the corner, and Knight was there with this. So that was Jeff Griffiths, in fact, who was the car that went on around initially, and Jeff Griffiths has gone around, and Knight and Masters in the end just coming into the scene of the accident and adding to it, really adding compound damage. And unfortunately, and then there was even further contact behind, as we believe, we're not quite sure who that was, being turned around for a brief moment, but definitely a lot of drama there through the chicane of the complex to Lycée, catching out so many drivers today. But as they make the way on around, it is getting a bit loose from all of our drivers at the moment. Some cloud comes over the circuit, but we've looked to the midfield and the back of the field for some time. Let's look at the front of the field here, and here is Daniel Thomas, who continues to lead the way from pole position as he makes his way up towards turns 12 and 13 once again. And right now the elite driver 1 second clear of what is Damon Lobbit with Håkon Grebstad not too far back, and Grebstad definitely really trying to push the two Audi drivers to the utmost here, because the Norwegian makes his way onto the brakes into turn number 14, looking very fast, flying that McLaren at the moment. Really looks as though that rear end is completely in the zone as he heads up towards the next hairpin. and within 2/10 of Damien Lobbett in front. But the challenge for Grebstad will be he can get this close, but can he find a way to pick his way on past, or does he want to? Does he actually just want to run behind and save some fuel instead? Now, of course, if he tries to run behind and save fuel, well, that also does open up the prospect of is Daniel Thomas breaking the man. I think Grebstad will have a pace that's in his mind that he'll try to run to, and if that pace is starting to fall off of where he's targeting in terms of the pace he's running in the car behind Lobbett, then he'll be forced to try and look for a move. But meanwhile, into the pit is Paul Smith from second place in the Pro Class. He's made his way on in, and this is a scheduled stop. He's up on the jacks, and with that, I wonder if Paul Smith is trying to go for a very early free stop and go aggressive. Meanwhile, Nathan Scott there being passed on the inside by Edward Knight into turn one. Knight makes the move, and Nathan Scott doesn't fight it too hard, and we are already starting to see the overlap of strategies. Now, to break it down for you in terms of strategies, in fact, we're going to park that ball because we have just had something happen a bit further back down the field that we do want to try and understand what's happened. That's A.G. Garcia, as you see our photographer there just tracking the car along, the Team Zor driver. Well, the photographer's got a great shot of the car, but that's not a great moment for A.G. Garcia. It's gone very wrong out of the chicane, and I'm trying to understand what exactly has happened. I think there's been an off track, and we take a look back. As he came out of the corner there with the number 8 car making its way on for that's Daniel Pais, and in the end, two of them come into contact at the chicane, and A.G. Garcia literally been given the elbow all the way out and turning the car around very gingerly on the throttle, but doing so in a safe man. Credit to Garcia to avoiding it going into the wall and bringing it back on circuit, but he won't be too pleased with how that started. But as he makes his way down towards the next chicane sequence here, breaking the band, in fact, coming into Adelaide right now, he's got a long way to go. Indeed, all the drivers who have been wounded or knocked about in this race so far, they will know there is a long way in this race. We are not even a third of the way in, and Richard Curie right now looking around the outside here of Ben Watkinson for P15 in the AM class. What is P40 on circuit? Watkinson goes deep, coming out of Adelaide, and Curie gets his nose ahead. It's a bit of drag race up towards the next corner. It's the battle of the BMWs, but Curie there defends on the racing line now, and I think for Watkinson he's going to have to wait till a bit later on, but as they roll their way through. Meanwhile, Mark Johnson here with an off track only moments ago, and A.G. Garcia coming on around in there on the outside, and well, A.G. Garcia immediately starting to make that recovery work. But we look back up towards the elite drivers at the front of the field, and what we see there taking a bit of a rallycross mode, that's Ryan Moles, who almost loses it there, coming out of that serial corner, chasing after Valandia for P9 over and in the elite class. And well, Ryan Moles definitely exploring the limits of the circuit and finding them and a bit more as he makes his way down to Adelaide corner, and as he rolls his way on through. That Protect car has definitely been built properly in terms of the fact he's been able to push it that hard. Meanwhile, speaking of pushing it, as he goes a bit deep there, Damien Lobbett, Håkon Grebstad goes up the inside of Damien Lobbett and takes P2 over on in the elite class for Indian Motorsport and gets a key position done. And will Damien Lobbett falling back there in a rare error by the looks of things, and as they make the way into the next sequence of corners, you can see the top three are broken away from the rest of the field, with now the second pack being led by Sam Congreve in the Seran Racing Red Machine as he makes his way through Nürburgring and through Imola and up into the Chateau d'Eau. But as he makes his way through the right hander here right now, the Briton hoping to try and chase down the top three, but at the same time Matthew Crispin, Dean Powell behind him, he's going to definitely be thinking about what's worth it more. Is it worth pushing it too hard at the moment, or is it worth about focusing on the strategy and perhaps backing off the throttle a little bit and just settling into a rhythm? Whereas he tries to do both effectives. You want to try and get a little bit of an edge on your rivals in front, but also find that middle ground at the same time. He heads into turn one once again as he goes into his 10th lap under race conditions. As they roll the way on through, we look a bit further back here too at Sean Valandia, who is behind Daniel Lee as they make their way into the next corner. And well, the privateer and the 188 Ferrari here, a bit of an understated driver so far in terms of how much ground he's made since the start of this race. Keep in mind he started P13 on the grid, he's moved up to P8 overall, and he's gained 4 elite class positions as part of that along the way. And Daniel Lee, we saw at Monza, of course, with an absolutely challenging qualifying session, nowhere near where he perhaps expected to be in qualifying compared to the pace that was set, but in the race himself he was able to really bring it out of the car in the race. And that's the thing with Lee, he does find a way to really bring the strategy together and also show that nuance that he has behind the Ferraris, much like Alex Gaines in the Pro Class. They're two drivers who just seem to find that the race comes to them much more naturally compared to qualifying. And well, speaking of Alex Gaines, he's currently P15, P3 in the Pro Class, as you see on the timing tower there, but we continue to focus on Lee as he makes his way through 180 and up towards the Imola chicane he goes. As he powers on out here, the key point now is our drivers, are we thinking about the strategies and do they go for the two or the three stop? And in terms of breaking this race up, if you're on a two stop, you would expect the pit stops to be around the 30-minute and the 60-minute mark. Meanwhile, a three stop strategy, if you divide 90 by 4, it doesn't go entirely even, but as our drivers make their way around, what they'll target approximately is 20-minute stints and then expand them out accordingly, you can imagine all be able to contract them in the fact that, in fact, as you do 4 into 90, as we do that quick bit of mental maths, it does come out in the region of what will be approximately 17.5 minutes for our drivers stint to stint. But as Daniel Lee rolls his way on to another lap, Jean Valandier, Stan Kroos, and also Ryan Moles, we can see that Ryan Davis just a little bit further back, and he's got pro leader Peter Cox for company as they make their way into the next corner. But as they come through turns 1 and 2 here, definitely now we are starting to see the emphasis turn from what was previously some mistakes and also some rather boisterous moves from drivers and also some key moves early on. We are now entering the strategy phase here where everybody is settling down, and now everyone's thinking about, okay, when do they fit, what's their place, what's their target marker, and also on top of that, the crew chiefs and the team and the strategy masters will be on the radio to say you need to go fast or you need to come in or look at extending the stint, etc. And there are also huge teams behind each of the drivers with regards to running the races. But meanwhile, one driver who's having a bit of a difficult race at the moment is Simon Hartley, who has just recently been a bit of a moment coming out of the chicane as he makes his way down. But Simon Hartley, who was involved in an incident early on which put him all the way back to the back of the AM class, he's moved back up to P8 in class and currently P33 overall. He's trying to chase down Daniel Pace is in front of him there as Pace goes on through. We lose Hartley for a brief moment there, but the Eastern Sport corporate driver continues to press on as meanwhile James Conley under pressure from Eden Frazina as they make the way through Adelaide here, and they go on through, and that Porsche is definitely going to look very fast here as he powers on down, and we ride on board with the privateer Frazina as he looks to go hunting for a top 5 place inside the AM class. Now heading into Nürburgring chicane, what it is for Frazina with regards to that straight line speed, the Porsche not known for acceleration nor for its top end, but what it is known for is its ability to corner extremely well. It's a very dicey car on that rear end. Get it right, however, and you'll find yourself, you'll be the fastest from corner to corner. And as he makes his way up towards the Imola, you can see with the Ferrari able to get the throttle down and just able to open that gap up a little bit more with 3.5 tenths between himself and Conley as they make their way into the Imola chicane, rolling on through. Frazina there taking a little bit of understeer of a corner apex at 13. Just creeping on that front right tyre, and as they make the way out of the Chateau d'Eau right now, both drivers are really pushing it. This is going to bite into the tyres. They're both cars that are known for quite excessive tyre wear. For the Ferrari, it's seen on those rear tyres, and on the Porsche as well. Both cars are really using up the compound available to them. As you can see, Conley just getting it a little bit ham-fisted there, coming over the apex curve of turn 50, and Frazina they're taking a much deeper line. I think having to let the brakes off in the end in order to compensate for the run as they make their way into the next lap. But as they come on through here, nothing between the two of them as they come on down towards Estoril Corner. But again, look at Conley, he's struggling under braking. Frazina meanwhile gets a really good run off the corner. Can he tuck it to the inside here? He gets the space, but it's going to be a drag race down all the way down. It's going to be Conley on the right, you picture Frazina on the left as they make their way past our cameraman. As they come right on through, the Ferrari now starts to open up the tanks. That V8 engine starting to really push on versus the 6-cylinder in the Porsche, but the Porsche on the inside there. Frazina goes all in on the brakes. He knows he has to, and does he get it done? It looks like he does. It's now going to be a run up towards the next corner, but it's a short run by comparison, and Eden Frazina moves up to P5 in the AMP class as they make the way on through. Meanwhile, further back, we've got a bit of a battle here between Mark Johnson and Thomas Barjak as they make the way into the same chicane as they roll the way on through. Well, no change between them there in the run, all settling down to room. You can't really go too wide through the chicane there, where it being cup cars all the way up to GT3 and higher classes. There's only really one racing line unless you are on the inside and you've got your nose fully alongside the nose of the other driver. Then you can go too wide, but you'd expect really the driver on the outside to back out. But Mark Johnson right now having backed out earlier, now going on the offensive once again, looking for the move here into Imola, but has to just lift off the throttle slightly as he gets it wrong. Coming on through, I think having to come off the throttle a little bit as he got too close to the back of his rival, and in return going to the wall. And it's not Mark Johnson's day, and indeed it has not been his season so far, as meanwhile Ryan Moles up the inside there of Daniel Lee for P8 in class, but overcooks it now under braking into Adelaide, and now Daniel Lee immediately comes back, and Lee there just playing it smart, sensible and safe. Moles coming in like a hammer there, and unfortunately finding they needed just to be a little bit more deft on the brakes to get it done. But as the Protect Motorsport driver heading down to 180 right now, you can see just how close he's getting under braking here, and what I think he's been given the hurry up in his ear by the team principal to say you need to pass Lee right now. This is not the strategy we're running to, as he makes his way coming up towards Imola once more. But as he charged on through, we're hearing that Mark Johnson has been towed to the pitch due to the damage he sustained earlier on as we saw him coming on through this sequence of corners. But right now focusing on the battle for P8 overall, Moles is on the charge, and Daniel Lee is looking absolutely composed, as is his natural mental state of mind as they make the way out the Chateau d'Eau and down towards the complex till I see. And as they make the way down through the chicane straight here, Sean Valandia behind and not really close enough at this time, just waiting and watching in the wings as they head into the final 3 corners to complete their current lap. As they roll the way on through the sequence right now, we do move into what is the 22nd minute here, and we start to creep into the territory of the potential first stop of our 3 stoppers, if you will, if they haven't already made the pit stop. And as they come down here, I think a lot of drivers will be going for a classic 2-stop here just to play it safe. Of course, this is the first endurance round, and therefore going for a gamble and strategy may not work out, with only being 2 endurance rounds of the season, 2 feature races and then 6 sprints. I think going for a gamble early may also prove valuable if you can time it right. But right now, speaking of time things right, can Moles this time time it right on the brakes? Will Lee there puts it on the centre right of the road, make sure that Moles knows he's coming. And as they made the way through turn number 5 and up towards 6, is going to be a drag race, and Moles gets the better launch off the corner, and Lee there, he's going to be on the outside, Moles on the inside. Moles returns to the racing line, and Lee in the end just cannot find a way to stem the acceleration of the Audi driver, as now Moles moves up into P8 ahead of Lee. But as they made the way into 180, meanwhile a bit further back we look to John Eddowes. It gets very hectic there through the Nürburgring chicane, and I believe, unless I'm mistaken, that is Ben Watkinson right now, who is being barracked left, right and centre as he's a lap down as he makes his way through. Watkinson can only get off the road as much as he possibly can, and to be fair, he will be respecting the blue flags, but everyone there trying to show a bit of patience as they make the way through the kinks of 10 and 11 and up towards 12 they go. As they head into Imola here, Eddowes just watching on as he chases after Dan Blackwell, and Blackwell getting close to the back of Alex Gaines, the elite driver here, a bit out of position compared to his peers, but trying to fight on all the same, as right now the 488 car continues to make its way up the order. He's going 3 places on the start, and started P19, P16 now, but he's only in P13 in the elite class, gaining 2 places in class as he makes his way towards the end of this lap. But as he comes on down, and meanwhile further back, James Connolly and Daniel Pace battling for P6 in the AM class here. Pace getting a better run off for 180s. Connolly went a bit deep, and as they make the way up towards the chicane, Connolly's not going to back out. But in the end there, Pace says enough's enough, and he cuts across the nose. Connolly gets it wrong, carries a bit too much speed in the dirty air, and as a result goes off, and he brings it back to terra firma in terms of the tarmac, but it's not enough in the end to continue the defence. And then Connolly has to drop to P7 in the AM class, P32 overall, as he makes his way down towards turn number 15. And Simon Hartley will take inspiration from this and think that he can also get involved here as they make the way to the complex till I see. But as they make the way now, we look to Casper Brotner here, who continues to chase after Adrian Garcia by comparison. And these two both having difficult starts to their race. Keep in mind they've dropped down, but then they've recovered. And Casper Brotner, when you consider where he started in class, he started right at the back of the field, it should be pointed out, and he has made his way all the way up into P10 in the AM class from P18, and what is P35 overall from P47 on the grid. And the old dudes in cards drivers here, well, whilst he may not have had the qualified session, he's definitely having a race that's preferable. And as he makes his way down the Gulf Straight, well, he's not close enough to Garcia this time around, but he's definitely continuing to make ground. As meanwhile, Connolly here under pressure from Hartley, and Hartley up the inside there, and it looks so Connolly. I wonder if there's a bit of damage on James Connolly's car, because he seems to be losing a huge amount of speed from corner to corner on the straights, or whether Connolly's just struggling right now on tyres alternative, whether he's doing something strategy-wise that nobody else has got in mind, and perhaps he's trying to pull off something which we'll see much later in the race. But the key point is that James Connolly is definitely going backwards right now compared to his peers around him, and the lap times say the same here, whereas most of his peers are lapping in the 40s, if not the 39s. Meanwhile, Connolly is in the 41s. But meanwhile, speaking of pit stops and strategy coming on in, well, we do have Aaron McGregor into the pits. He comes in from the lead of the AM class, as does Jeff Griffiths. McGregor misses pit box, and that is going to cost him a huge amount of time, and that may just upset the balance here, albeit he was leading by a considerable margin. That's not the way he'll want it to go, as meanwhile we look to our leader in the elite class and overall of Daniel Thomas here as he comes through 180 once again, and continues to lead at the moment as he makes his way on through. And we see the question there from Tampax Comfort in the YouTube chat asking, are there any Ford GTs? Unfortunately, not tonight, good sir or madam, given the fact our one Ford GT driver is not in attendance, and that would be Austin William Campbell. But we do hope to see Austin William Campbell returning in the near future, because of course the Ford GT, a bit of a unicorn in the field, but we got to see it absolutely raw and settle the score last time out at Monza with a valiant defence all the way towards the end, but no 4 GTs today. But as we do look to Daniel Thomas making his way down into the braking zone here, we look a bit further back down the order to P6 in the Pro class, and what is P19 overall of Nathan Scott from Simam Racing Blue, who continues to try and hound, harass and grind his way past where is Edward Knight there as they make their way up towards Imola, and as they come into the right-hander at the moment, we have got a number of drivers into the pit lane. Damien Lobbett, Sam Congreve, Dean Powell, Joe Newman. In fact, it does seem as though we are seeing that crossover point for our first set of pit stops now, and I reckon that will be for our 2 stoppers in terms of coming on in. And will we see drivers change tyres early on, or will they wait until later on in the race, or will they just change some tyres initially and then change the others later on? That's all the considerations, all the flexibility of strategy here, as we see Nathan Scott continuing to just stay close to Edwin Knight, but falling back a little bit, as in fact both drivers are into the pit lane there, so I think we might see quite the activity in the pit lane for some time. But meanwhile, one driver who goes on it and yet to take his first pit stop is the Indian Motorsport Spark driver from South Africa, Oliver Jaco Boschov, as he makes his way into turns 1 and 2 and going longer here than some, and this may benefit him in the long run given the fact that we have seen how difficult it is to overtake here, or how much of an advantage you need to have, and therefore he may just gain track position throughout the overcut. But as he powers his way on down the Gulf Straight, and see Dean Powell and Damien Lobbett behind, and in fact Dean Powell there jumping ahead of Damien Lobbett, and Lobbett with a pit stop that was 5 seconds longer than Dean Powell's, and therefore Lobbett losing out massively, and Sam Congreve there just behind as well. Will Lobbett falling by the wayside on the strategy after dropping to P3 behind Håkon Grebstad. That pit stop has not worked out well for the Symphony Esports driver, and now he's got to try and find a way to turn things around given the fact that he has lost track position, not gained it in the pit lane. But as they make their way on through it, meanwhile we do have more happening in the pit lane with regards to our AM drivers. Most of the drivers you see here are AMs at the moment, buying the safe to go in the front of your picture, and as they all head on down, well, right now who is coming out in front of whom? Well, we see Jack Bullen making his way out of the pit lane, and Bullen in fact really running a good race right now, up into P3 in the AM class. What is P28 as he makes his way out of the pit lane? He's got to be careful there, very sensitive on the throttle carrying out the pit exit, given the fact he's on an outside line in a drop, and it's an off-camber corner as a result, and therefore the car will want to understeer naturally on pit exit, and he has to stay to the left of the white line, otherwise he will be given an automated penalty. And as he makes his way down towards turn number 5, well, we are hearing that Dan Blackwell's been involved in some sort of moment at 180 as he heads on through turns 10 and 11. But as he charges up towards that turn at number 12 and 13, in towards Imola he goes. Blackwell has made his pit stop. He's still P13 in the elite class and trying to fit his way into the field. But meanwhile, Speeder drives fitting their way into the field at the moment. John Eddowes into the pit lane. He's on the lead of the pro class. Sean Blended just behind him there. Also got Peter Cox. In fact, Peter Cox leaving the pit lane. So Cox will come on out. And where is everybody else in class? That's the question. Well, Cox rolls on through. And in fact, I believe, unless I'm very much mistaken, Peter Cox now leading in the pro class for the first time today as he makes his way out of turn number 3 from Estoril corner, and behind him there was a little bit of snap moment coming out of Estoril, cold tyres catching him out, and as he powers on down, we've got elite drivers aplenty around him. That's Ryan Davies trying to go up his inside. Also you see Sean Valandia coming on through, and the UKSimRacing driver here, I think he'll just let this go to be fair, but you can see how right now Valandia trying to siphon all the space that Ryan Davies has broken open for him. The 2 TE SimSport drivers from sister teams right now working together here as they leave their teammate Martin Tillin behind, who's tucked in by Peter Cox. They make the way into Nürburgring, but quite a few shenanigans going on there in terms of trying to open doors into Adelaide Hairpin, and Aaron McGregor the same, the AM leader, who after his pit stop is P18 overall. He's never let go of the lead in the AM class to be fair so far, but McGregor is absolutely flying right now. After one round of pit stops, he's opened up a gap of 11.5 seconds to P2 in the AM class. That's held by Darren Sharples, and he's not looking back at all. He is absolutely pushing on McGregor. I think this is his right now, unless we see anything in terms of an invert on the strategy later on. McGregor just seems to be in a world of his own here today, but as he makes his way up towards Imola, he won't take anything for granted. He'll just simply focus on what he can do. As meanwhile, making his way out of the pit lane here is Daniel Lee, who has gone the latest of any of our elite drivers, including also Daniel Thomas and Håkon Grebstad, who've come out the pits recently. And where will Lee fit into this? Well, here is Ryan Davies, who's P9. And the key thing here for Ryan Davies is if he comes out behind Daniel Lee as Lee rolls his way off there tyre on the white line. I think he was just in terms of the centre of the tyre, so it will be okay. But meanwhile, speed of saying that's not okay right now for Joe Newman as he's got to try and battle for position. Oh goodness, there's contact there with Matthew Chris, the two drivers touching under braking, and Newman going on the offensive there for P5 in the elite class, and will squeeze his rival all the way to the end. And as we ride on board the gearbox, the Audi driver right now, of course these two machines both powered by the same Audi V10 engine. The Lamborghini Huracan there, the GT3 Evo, different chassis, different manufacturer of the car, but the same engine manufacturers. They make the way out to turn number 180 in terms of with turn number 9, and as they make the way through 10 up towards 11 right now, you can see how Chris, after being given a slight elbow out there, not too pleased with that. I think trying to give a little tap to the back of Newman to say, hey, I'm still here, I'm not just going to disappear, as they make the way through 12 and 13. As they make the way into the braking zone here for the Chateau turn number 14, you can see how now Chris were really galvanised by that, and I think not expecting the place to drop away for him as they make the way up towards turn number 15 right now. And this is what we love to see, two rivals, because we don't want them to send one over the circuit. We do not want to see them really get their elbows out completely, but these two are no strangers to one another in terms of battling hard as sparks fly as they both clatter their way over the chicane and make the way towards another lap. But it looks as though there Chris found a really poor run, in fact, and to slow down a little bit there as he brings himself up to speed, and Newman breaking away for now. And I think Chris just taking too much of the chicane curve at turn number 17, and as a result being given a mandatory slowdown there, which he has served already, and that's opened up the gap from what was at the time 0.8 seconds to 1.6. As they make the way on down towards turn number 5, charging on through right now. Fastest lap owned by Håkon Grebstad, your P2 driver overall, as observed by Si Anthony in the YouTube chat. And we are hearing, and we'll say it's not so, Damien Lobbit has had to retire from this race due to a technical issue with regards to his steering wheel. It has completely disconnected in terms of he's got no feel for the steering wheel in the car, and therefore Damien Lobbit has retired early, and that really does open up the door now to Daniel Thompson and Håkon Grebstad to fight for the win between the two of them in the elite and overall categories. That's very unfortunate, but consider that to be notched up the equivalent to an engine failure in real world motorsport. Of course, it may be simulated here, but all the emotions that go with it are just as real. And as we see here, Simon Hartley chasing after James Colley right now. Well, Hartley again having to find himself past Connie. He did this earlier, remember, but now on strategy they've ended up the other way round, and he's got to make it work once more as they head down towards turn number 1. Now in the rundown here, Simon Hartley's pit stop only 2 attempts slower by comparison with Conley, so it must have been a little bit of pit lane magic for Conley that's really made it work out. But as he made the way through turn number 3 there for Estoril and onto the Gulf Straight, we can see the Audi driver there getting the better run off the corner, using the stronger rotation of the Audi. But as they drag race their way on down, that Ferrari no slouch here as it opens up the gearbox. So you can see Hartley, despite the overspeed initially, is Conley there, puts it in the middle of the road, and you can see Klein there looking left. In fact, that's Brotner looking left, looking right. He can't find his way through, but Hartley goes very deep. He almost takes the gravel there, and Brotner tries to find his way into the fight as they make the way down towards Nürburgring. It's a chicane they go, but Brotner backs off, and we jump on board with the Lamborghini driver here as he heads on towards turn number 9. Now Casper Brotner in the O-Dudes and Cars machine really trying to be an opportunist there in the run to Adelaide. You can see what he was looking to do. He was trying to make it free wide and seize on the inside, but with the fact that Conley and Hartley were battling so hard on the brakes and left it as late as possible, Brotner in the end deciding, okay, I don't want to be a part of this. But as they make their way up into Imola, you can see how Hartley gets such a strong run off of every corner, but he's just not able to make the final 5%, which is the run up the inside as they break their way into the hairpin. And well, that's not good for Brotner there if he sees Hartley disappearing in out of existence, because that will put him off of his racing line. And you see how the gap has dropped a little bit there, a little bit latency, it would seem, for Hartley as they make the way up towards the complex to IC. But Brotner right now looking at these two in front and getting ready to pounce should an opportunity arise as they make the way. It's turn 16 and 17, but rolling the way on through. Oh, goodness me! And it's all gone wrong. There were latency for Brotner, and Brotner will be furious at that. There was nothing he could do, would argue, given the fact he didn't know where his rival was going to be materialised, but it's gone wrong for Brotner as meanwhile Frank Klein comes on through, they gains 1 place. But the problem for Klein right now, the TG6 corporate driver, is he's got the pressure from Adrian Kukulas behind, and they've also got Daniel Thomas, your race leader, making his way on through, and now effectively going to lap them shortly as they make the way down the Gold Straight. Now Kukulas immediately stay on the outside there, not close enough to Klein at the moment as Klein just makes his way on through. Meanwhile, we can tell you in what is the Pro class, there's been an incident involving Peter Cox at some point quite recently, and that's dropped it down to P3 in class. We'll try and find out what exactly happened with that. We've got a replay coming up. Well, here was Peter Cox from what we believe was the lead of the Pro Class only moments ago. And as he broke his way on down into 180, oh, goodness me. And that is Ben Watkinson returning to the circuit. Not mind when the end of Peter Cox coming up his inside and the two drivers coming together. And I think Peter Cox there seeing the space, trying to go for it. And Watkinson shutting the door. That's a difficult one for the pair of them there. And Cox being knocked about. And, well, with that, John Eddowes now is your leader in the Pro Class. As we looked at Tiki Simsport Kimi driver leading his first laps this season. I believe this is the first time he's led a lap all season and with a comfortable space. And I think for the BMW driver he was talking about looking good going into Magny-Cours tonight. We certainly looking to be in control currently with Chris Eddersford there in P2, the UK Sim Racing driver, who right now really going on a charge here and trying to find the win in the Pro Class. It's been some time since we've seen him on the podium, but definitely today he is looking to be one of the big names of Peter Cox just behind. But look at Alex Gaines there, and as we said earlier, the one thing you cannot count out with the Frenchman is that he will be there on the podium at the very end, or if he's not on the podium, he's going to be so close to it. He's almost like that driver who's looking over the fence all the time, lurking at the podium drivers and saying, look, I'm coming for you whether you like it or not. You can never count Gaines out no matter where he qualifies on this grid. And right now, as we see there going up his inside, that's Dan Blackwell who forces the move and comes on through in the elite class there, and overall to P15. Well, Gaines won't be too pleased with that, but at the same time, you'll be aware of the fact that may also be what happens to his podium rivals, as meanwhile Aaron McGregor here finds himself caught up between Edward Knight and Ben Watkinson. Watkinson a lap down the outside, lets the car run off the circuit then, lets all the drivers on through, respecting the blue flags. But as they make their way through, you've got to feel for Watkinson here, because he's really having to try and find a way to let everybody go, but also run his own race and respect the blue flags and not pick off tracks with it, as they make their way side by side to turn number one. And Nathan Scott comes them through as they make their way into the next corner. But as they break the way on down, it just never ends for Watkinson. It's now got Joel Amos behind, and Amos trying to also find some space there to come on past the BMW as they make their way onwards towards Adelaide. As they charge them through, Watkinson flashes lights as well. I don't think he appreciates being knocked around too much, but as they make the way up towards the hairpin here, I think things will calm down for a brief moment as the Symphony Esports white driver Amos gets the move done here under braking into the hairpin. As they come on through. And meanwhile, Tom Farr tucking in behind Fresina there. The pro driver gains a place on Paul Smith, and Smith in for his second stop already. And I wonder what Paul Smith is trying to do here in terms of strategy, because Paul Smith, your pole sitter in the Pro Class, if my memory serves me correctly, and well, he's dropped a long way down the order right now. And with that first pit stop and now a second pit stop, what is Smith's plan? Because this would put him on a free stop essentially, given the fact he pitted after 10 minutes. He's pitted again after a further, what is 28 minutes, and now he'll be going, we suspect, even deeper into this race with one more pit stop on the cards. Meanwhile, we see here Blackwell coming in like a missile there to Peter Cox, and well, I don't think Peter Cox is going to be too impressed with that one, because now Alex Gaines is going to have all the time in the world to try and go on the offensive for P3 in the Pro Class. As they break the way down into the corner, he goes up the inside into Lycee hairpin, and as he goes for it there, he doesn't give up as he gets the elbows out. Peter Cox there being made to back off, and as the UK Sim Racing driver there given the stern elbow, Alex Gaines moves up into P3 in class, and will Gaines now up into the podium place for the first time today, and he's continuing to push on. Now his next target will be Chris Eddersford, who is 2.5 seconds up the road, and will be wary of the fact that the Flying Frenchman is continuing to rise through the ranks. As they make the way up towards turn number 5, we do say hello there to Jack Taylor in the YouTube chat, and as our drivers continue to press on down here towards turn number 5, the action does not stop, albeit it's in isolated pockets, but all of our drivers getting themselves set up for success as time trickles on. And we see here another example, Adrian Kukulas, who goes up the inside there, James Conley, who finds a bit too much depth to turn number 14, and Conley there also letting Håkon Grebstad through, as Kukulas here now will have the Indian Motorsport driver very shortly being looking in his rearview mirrors and seeing a face for the McLaren that wants to go through on the lead lap. But as they make the way through turn 16 and 17, Kukulas, they're absolutely hammering the first apex curve there of the final chicane, and with the car going on full four wheels for a brief moment, brings it back down to the tarmac, but he can't afford to do that every time, as it will start to really hurt the suspension if he does it repetitively, and also unsettles the car when he gets the power down. But meanwhile, Conley there letting Dean Powell go. And well, speaking of Dean Powell, the Ferrari driver here, he's become a little bit of an understatement in terms of how far he's come through the field in this race. He started P6 overall, and in the elite class he's up to P3, and right now he is gaining on Håkon Grebstad as he looks up the inside there of what is Kukulas, who gives the space. And as they make their way out of Adelaide, Powell is really starting to knock the lap collapse in and bring Grebstad towards him, because they make the way up towards turn number 8 into 9 as they come on through at Nürburgring and down into 180, where you can see Powell look very close behind the McLaren driver. Meanwhile, further back, Matthew Crisp here battling with Ryan Moles, and Moles trying to go on the move here for P6 up the inside after Adelaide. Too wide there through Nürburgring, and as they make the way into 180, it's not going to stop. Crisp there is not backing out. He puts his foot down and says, "You shall not pass," and Ryan Moles finds himself wanting. But now it's going to battle with acceleration. It's Audi engine on Audi engine. It's Lamborghini chassis versus Audi chassis, and as they make the way up towards Imola, Matthew Crisp absolutely defiant as they come on through Imola, and it's now one wide for a brief moment. But Moles trying to find his way back into this fight as we jump on board with a Protect Motorsport driver here, and as they come on through turn 14, you can see the difference in the Audi driver's approach. He's so aggressive under braking, and that rotation he gets over the corner is absolutely staggering as they make the way down into the braking zone here for turn number 15. Through the complex to IC they go, but the thing for the Protect Motorsport driver is he comes right into left through 16 into 17, bouncing over the curbs, and as they make the way up towards turn number 1, Moles has to back off there. He's just not able to carry the speed to the next corner, but as they come down through 1 into 2, right now Moles definitely looking dangerous, but Crisp as well. Regardless of whatever's thrown at him, he finds a way to dig a defence in, and it is absolutely testament to his abilities as they make the way down towards Adelaide via the Golf King. And as they come through, they've got Jack Bullen in front of them, in the tow there of the AM driver, who's a lap down effectively, and it's going to be one wide here for the two elite drivers as Bullen stays to left, and Moles comes on through, but Chris goes overly deep, and as they powering out of the corner, Moles gets it done, and it's a mistake from Chris. That is the difference. I mean, it may have just been the overspeed there that caught him out a little bit, but Ryan Moles has gained P6 in the elite class. Meanwhile, further back, Stephen Masters here, the P13 elite driver, charging on through, chasing after Peter Cox as they make the way through turn number 3 through Estoril they go. And I think Peter Cox has just been involved in a little bit of a moment with Nathan Scott and also Joe Amos. We take a look back. So this was only moments ago down into the complex to Lycée. Peter Cox on the outside, Nathan Scott looks up the inside here, gets the move done, or does he? As they make the way for the chicane, he does, but that costs Peter Cox all the speed he needs. And then Joel Amos here, watch Amos look to the inside. That's Amos on the overspeed and just simply says, I'll go up the inside here whether you like it or not. And Cox in the end has to lift off the throttle slightly to respect the fact he's got to drive on the inside, and Peter Cox losing 2 places for 1 moment for the complex to Lycée as we now return to live pictures, and Cox is going backwards here. And he does not want to be going backwards at this rate. I can definitely tell you that at the moment, given the fact he is not working out after a great start to this race. He's been given the elbow out by a good number of drivers, and it is not working out at all. But meanwhile, speaking of things that are not working out, we're hearing that Jack Bullen's gone around what is the start for this straight, then that's coming out of the chicane, and well, as he parks up then lets everybody go on through. Bullen definitely having a difficult moment as our drivers continue to make the way on around. But meanwhile, speaking of drivers who right now under a bit of pressure, Håkon Grebstad here, currently P2 in the elite and overall categories, will now under pressure from Dean Powell, who has closed up very fast indeed, and over the last 3 laps Dean Powell's absolutely stripped that gap down to what is now 6 tenths on average as they come through 180. As they make the way through the left-hander and through the Kingston 10-11 very shortly. Behind them is Frank Klein, who's a lap down P5 in the AM class. They won't have any interference in this battle for some time, but as they make the way in towards the next chicane, going through Imola now, we can see Grebstad here just focusing on his race, and I wonder if Grebstad here is running on a conservative strategy. I wonder if he's thinking more about that final stint and minimising the length of the pit stop, whereas Powell may be going all in. Perhaps Powell's being forced here onto a more aggressive strategy by comparison, because we are nearing the halfway point of this race. We're in the 45th minute now, and as I try to get ready to transition into the second half, this is where the strategies will really start to come to fruition in terms of who's been the more aggressive and who's played the long game on fuel and tyres. But Powell definitely right now is playing the short-term game of chasing down Grebstad and taking another 3 tenths out of him on that lap. Well, for Powell, it's all about that P2 position as he comes down to Estoril corner. But meanwhile, we look back to Peter Cox, who's gone round at 180 here, as we see Alex Hill trying to come on through, and Hill having to back off there as they make the way out to 180. And Peter Cox definitely just not having a good day. What's happened to the UKSimRacing driver this time around? Well, in the run here through what was the Nürburgring chicane by himself at the moment. The car gets unsettled there off the Nürburgring into 180, and the rear lifts up there under braking, and it just lets loose, just not the grip available. And I wonder perhaps if he's overheated the tyres at some point earlier on in the lap, and those rear tyres have just said no. when he's wanted them to stop the car. But as we return to live pictures here, more happening further back as we can see that James Conley in a bit of contact with Daniel Page. They come out of Adelaide. We've got a car pointing the wrong way. I think that's Michael Warrington, in fact, who's looking the wrong way in the back of your picture. The support system meets the eye, but James Conley gets ahead of Page. But what on earth has happened there? That's the big question, as that is Michael Warrington, and Conley has recovered that P7 in the AM class of Daniel Page. We've got Richard Curie a bit further back, and Curie coming back into this mix. And you remember the Team Zor driver involved in a major shunt earlier on in the race, and now the number 7 car charging after place inside the top 10. This is fantastic from the perspective that anybody can get back into the fight. Of course, we don't want to see drives going on around or people getting it wrong, but it does open up opportunities to drivers, there's no question about it. As James Conley here battling side by side with Brian Moles, as Moles on the lead lap trying to find his way through the AM traffic. But the thing with all this is Conley there being given the move on the outside at the where's the Chateau du Haut, now having to defend versus Page coming through the complex to IC, and Chris now will want the same run through, much like Moles. They make the way onto the next lap, but as they roll the way on through it and down towards turn number 1, well, for Conley here, he's going to be safe for now, as it looks like Page is having to give way to Chris, who makes his way on through. But we do find out what exactly happened to Michael Warrington only moments ago. Well, this was in the charge down the Gulf Straight, so Warrington coming from 2 places back to battle for P7 in the AM class. Gets 1, gets 2, onto the brakes here, gets it stopped, but he overcooks it under brake. He goes a bit deep as a result, gets the power and contact there with Brian Moles, and he brings himself back onto the circuit. The bumper comes off the car, and for Warrington, that has not worked out at all. After what was looking to be a death-defying move, in the end has turned out into disaster. As we return back to your live pictures here, and Page right now continues to chase after Conley in the battle for P7 in the AM class. It does seem that position is a little bit cursed given the way it's played out for so many drives so far. But meanwhile, we look from them to P2 in the Pro class here. And Chris Eddersford holds the position for now, but the UKSimRacing driver has 1 driver behind him threatening to take the position, and that is Alex Gaines. As Eddersford there defends in the middle of the road, Gaines takes a look to the inside, but the BMW driver they're not able to beat the Audi on the brakes. And well, the BMW is good on the brakes, but it's not as strong as a good number of its counterparts. And as they make the way through the King of 6 and up towards 7-8 they go into Nürburgring, they make the way on through line astern for now. Edward Knight behind this pair as well, also trying to get into the fight for the podium of the Pro class. Well, all 3 drivers here, all with a good chance, but class leader of John Eddowes by comparison is 10.5 seconds up the road, and he's being given all the breathing room that he needs right now to open up his strategy and open up the plan as they make the way into the next chicane of Imola. But as they make the way on through, we do have Ryan Davies into the pit lane from what was P9 in the elite class and also P9 overall. So I wonder if we're going to be seeing some more pit stops soon in terms of drivers starting to look for that second pit stop, because the vast majority of our drivers right now have all made 1 stop. The only exceptions being 2 stops for Peter Cox and also for Paul Smith, and 3 stops for what is Ben Watkinson with the damage he's picked up over the race. But so many drivers here, all in the 1 stop so far. We expected the second stop, that be it in terms of the pit stops. Well, meanwhile, Edward Knight are getting the better run of the chicane. Gaines on the outside, Knight on the inside. They go too wide into turn 1. Knight's going to have the rotation on the inside line with a Lamborghini. Meanwhile, the BMW driver of Gaines just backs out, and Gaines here, well, he's definitely playing a very smart game as the Frenchman's. Knight definitely also showing his cards to make his way on through. And Eddersford being given a 1 second gap to play with here for the time being. But the thing is, I think Gaines is more focused on that final stint, because the way he's driving right now, he's not fighting hard with somebody in classes coming up behind, because I think he's guessing that if he can save fuel behind them, he'll jump them in the pits and he'll be battling for P2 at the very end. And that is why Gaines is your championship leader so far in the Pro class going into this round, for the simple reason that he is playing every race smart and finding those opportunities to creep onto the podium. But meanwhile, speaking of podium potential drivers here who creep the way into the pits, Dean Powell comes on in the number 6 car from P3 overall. We said he might be going a bit aggressive here, and I think the strategy is starting to play out. Meanwhile, Sam Congreve in the SimRacing red car ahead of teammate Joe Newman makes his way onto the next lap and takes P3 on track. As he makes his way through Estoril this time, Joe Newman not too far behind, and these two matching one another for lap pace, lap after lap. And SimRacing Red really enjoying a good run of form today in the elite class, with both Newman and Congreve lapping well and battling for top 5 positions. I think they'll be itching for a podium finish here, but will they be able to find it? That's the question as Powell's had a quick stop and is making his way out the pit lane already, but he's dropped all the way back to P10 in class. And where has Dean Powell come out in all of this was he makes out the pit lane. That's going to be a pro leader. John Eddowes there side by side with him. This is something that Powell could do without for the simple reason he's now going to be caught up behind the pro driver. I think what he'll be absolutely hoping happens as they make the way down the Gulf stretch here is that Eddowes will be coming into the pits in the next lap or two, because for now this actually helps Powell because he'll be picking up a bit of speed on the straight that he wouldn't have otherwise. But I imagine, given the relative pace delta of the two of them, with Powell on average being a couple of tenths faster a lap, if not more than that, he'll very quickly close up behind Eddowes, and then will find himself having to force a move on circuit. Unless Eddowes is polite and lets him go, of course. Eddowes may do that given the fact they're not in the same race in terms of the classes they're racing in, and there's no point trying to hold up another driver, particularly if he's just pitted by comparison. But as they make the way down towards turn number 10 here, coming on through at 180 at turn 9 and up towards 10. How they're going a bit deep, and that dirty head definitely catching him out that time. I think Dean Powell's strategy is not playing off as the way he wanted it right now, as he tries to get himself back up to speed as quickly as possible. But as he makes his way onwards towards the next corner, we look a little bit further down the order to Tom Farr, the driver of the privateer in the pro class, P8 in the pro class, P25 overall, who continues to try and fight his way between the amps here to go hunted after Peter Cox, who's only 3 seconds up the road, as we briefly do lose Tom Farr, and hopefully that is not a sign of a connection issue, as he does rematerialise a little bit further back, as you can see them making the way on through. But Tom Farr definitely having a slight connection issue there. Peter Cox just having issues being knocked about today, and therefore these two gradually coming together. But as they make the way on through, meanwhile Chris Eddersford still P2 in the pro class. About 11 seconds off of John Eddowes, but in return only half a second ahead of Ed Knight behind as they make the way down towards turn 1. Edward Knight really pushing on as they make the way into the next two corners here and on to the next lap, and it's all to play for. Now, if you're wondering why the AM class has moved ahead of the pro class on our timing tower, well, it's not because we have our AM drivers ahead of our pros on circuit. It is because the fastest lap in the AM class, which has just been set by Aaron McGregor as a 38.16, I do believe. In fact, it's 36.68. It was set quite recently. That is faster than the fastest lap in the pro class there. If you're just worried about that one, and that goes to show you how hard McGregor is pushing as he's leaving the pit lane, and Darren Sharples has come on in. Meanwhile, Chris Eddersford will have his own worries with regards to Knight being extremely close, coming out of Adelaide Corner and up towards the Nürburgring chicane they go. But as they make the way on through here, Gaines continues to watch and wait and listen for that opportunity to arise as he makes his way on through 180 here. We've got another pit stop session coming up now by looks. We've got Sam Congreve and Joe Newman in. The two Siman Racing Red drivers both timing their pit stops together. Ryan Mole's in as well. So with that in mind, now our drivers are pitting just before the hour, approximately 7 minutes before the hour. I wonder if there's going to have to be quite a bit of fuel saving on the final stint, or whether all the fuel savings coming into this second stint now, and therefore on the third stint we will really see our drivers give it hammer and tongs and go all into the finish. Given the fact as well, most of our drivers are not changing tyres, it would seem, in the majority of the cases here. Well, at least we haven't got any data to give us that reference at the moment, so therefore we could be seeing tyre degradation really play a big factor right at the end of this race. Speaking of a factor that plays into the hands of strategy, Dean Powell came in from P3, makes his way on down towards turn 3 here at Estoril Corner, and well, how has that fact that he came up behind John Eddowes impacted his race? Well, he's still ahead of Sam Congreve and Joe Newman. Remember, of course, that these three were P3 through to P5 before they came into the pits. Powell in that P3 position. He's come out back ahead of them, so this has worked so far, but you can definitely see the damage that's been done here. The gap between Powell and Congreve has been slashed from what was 4 seconds before they came into the pits down to 2 seconds. The Powell's had a difficult outlap, and it has not worked out on the strategy stakes in terms of getting him closer to the top two, it would seem, rather than pulling him away from P4, P5. But the racing goes on. Still plenty to play for here as our drivers make the way on around. More pit stops ongoing, as you can see on the timing tower. We've got Tom Farr into the pit lane. We've also got Frank Klein in the AM class into the pit lane, and Eden Frazina as well. And in fact, Aaron McGregor, meanwhile, well, he's already made his second stop, and he's chasing after their Dan Blackwell as they make the way up towards turn number 5. Well, McGregor here will be looking to go around the outside. I think he's just trying to bleed the speed off the car as well as trying to look for the move. But by committing to the outside so early, he's almost saying to Blackwell, look, just take the line and get it done. but he makes a bit of contact there, and well, McGregor right now does not want to be in the sandwich of the elite driver in front of him, the Pro of Night behind him, for the simple reason that he just wants to bring home the win here and become our first and repeat winner as he makes his way through Nürburgring and up towards 180, but there's still plenty of time to go, and indeed any drama could happen and upset the balance. It's not over yet, it's only over when they cross that finish line and the checker flag waves as our drivers make the way onwards towards the end of their lap. But as they do, we look to Congreve here, who's fallen back towards Joe Newman. And the two iRacing red drivers getting closer and closer. And I think it's a mistake from Congreve at the end of the previous lap that's cost him dear. Now, will Congreve let Newman go on the run-down Golf as they make the way out towards Adelaide? I suspect he will. Newman's taking a look here. Congreve's staying to the outside. He brings it into the middle of the road, but that's to shorten the run to the corner. But in the end, Newman up the inside. Congreve does not fight it hard when he could have put the car on the inside there. And I think the two teammates swapping places and deciding that Newman right now needs to go to bring Dean Powell into the mix for them. But as they make the way on through and up towards the next sequence of corners, John Eddowes yet to take his second stop. The Tiki Sport Kimi driver leading the pro class finds himself in a rather nice position here, which is he's dictating the pace of his race quite comfortably. He's not really been held up too much, and the only drivers in front of him they all need to look to pass. The drivers who are a lap down all need to respect the blue flags when they are waved, including Tom Farr in front of him. But meanwhile, a bit further up the road, Sean Valandia and also Martin Tin, the two Tiki Sport McLaren drivers, making their way on down the hill through at the chicane straight and up towards the Lacey hairpin. And as they come onto the anchors here, both drivers are enjoying a very comfortable run in what is P4, P5 respectively, as we see Tilling into the pit lane, Valandia staying on, and as they make the one through, they're splitting the strategies of Tiki Sport, but there's no question about it. But as they head on to the next lap, we're hearing that Paul Smith has had to be towed to the pits, and the same for Richard Curie. What exactly has happened to Paul Smith, as Smith was running a bit further down the order on an alternative strategy, and it's not worked out. Well, this is what happened to Paul Smith coming out of Estoril corner. Now as he made his way on through to the gravel there. Oh, goodness me, that's not good news of any type. With Richard Curie's gone wide, and well, in the end, Paul Smith carried too much speed and Curie minded his own business. He probably didn't even know Smith was coming up behind him, to be fair. And in the end for Curie, well, that's contact between the two of them. It's both led to them being towed to the pits, and it's not the way they've wanted their races to go at all. It's a difficult day for Richard Curie and also Paul Smith, and for Curie in particular, who had recovered so far up the order in the AM class, was battling to be inside the middle portion of the top 10, and it's all unfolded in the wrong way possible in the mid stages of this race. We had 47 starters, and in terms of drivers out of the circuit at the moment, I do believe we have approximately what is still 38 drivers running, and I say approximately here as we're trying to update our data to find out the number of retirements and who exactly is retired, but definitely now attrition is playing a factor as the race wears on. Of course, all our drivers are so used to the 45-minute sprint so far. They practice this 1.5 hour race, there's no question about it, but practice is one thing. When you're running it for real, it's a completely different thing, and it does take that extra bit out of you. Speaking of retirements, we have had confirmation of a retirement for Daniel Bayes in the AM class. He's retired. You can see a P9 listed as Frank Klein's into the pit lane, and Sean Valandia comes into the pit lane from P4 in the elite class. Well, what happens then for Dean Powell as he makes his way into Complex de l'IC? We can see here that right now the number 6 Ferrari definitely falling backwards as they make their way on through the chicane. He's falling backwards to the iRacing pair, and a great bit of teamwork, as you say, Simon Anthony, in the YouTube chat between what is Joe Newman and Sam Congreve, both working together to pull Powell into the mix. But it's a big consideration here in the fact that Daniel Thomas right now has come out behind Daniel Lee. He is your leader in class, but he's caught up behind Lee, and it's going to cost him a bit of race time. And we'll give him that Håkon Grebstad. It's 25 seconds up the road. If Thomas cannot find a way past Lee before Lee comes into the pits, he finds himself impeded. Well, for Thomas, this may just turn the fortunes that were looking so definitely in his favour back into equality, and Grebstad could be back into this race for the potential win. But as they come on down here through 180, we do look a bit further back to Powell, who continues to chase after Eden Frazina there, who is a lap down in the AM class, P3 in the AM class, and he's trying to break away from Newman and Congreve falling backwards there quite considerably, as the gap does seem to open up between them at the moment. And Congreve here definitely, I think, letting Newman go and trying to hound and hassle Dean Powell as they make the way on towards the end of this race. We do have just over half an hour to go. The intensity is still there, and with it we can expect the race is only going to get ever more intense as the strategies start to crisscross and interweave, and we get to see who is going to be able to keep it straight until the very end. But as we see Dean Powell breaking it down, it's going to be a move from Newman. Powell leaves the door open, and well, I don't think he expected Newman to come in that hot, but the Audi definitely showing just how much strength it has on the brakes and as they make the way down through the chicane straight, Powell there defends the inside, and well, Newman's made to go to the outside there, but to be fair, Powell will now lose so much traction off the corner, but it's one wide through here, he can afford to lose it as they make the way onto the next lap. They power on through, and well there, the Audi's looking ever more menacing as they make the way up towards turn number 1, and as they head their way down through the Curva Grande and up towards turn number 3 into the real corner. Powell doing everything he can to hold on for now, but Newman will get the run off the corner. He's doing 3 attempts as they get on the power, and the Audi will accelerate fast, but that Ferrari's got the legs. Now which one will it be? Will it be the Italian Stallion, or will it be the German masterclass of machinery that hold on to the lead of this position as they battle onto the brakes into Adelaide? Powell on the left, it's Newman on the right, and as they roll the way in, Powell parks on apex. Can he get it stopped in time? He does, but now Newman tries to get the run off the corner, but it's not enough, and Dean Powell keeps the SimRacing machine at bay for just a little bit longer as the privateer now definitely under so much pressure, and Congreve has closed immediately right back up to this with the battles as they head on down into 180, but as they make the way through the long left-hander. Meanwhile, further back, Alex Gaines, after that second pit stop, has come up behind Joel Amos, and Gaines, well, having a much longer pit stop than most in class, 25.5 seconds compared to Amos's 20-second pit stop, and Peter Cox behind a 13-second pit stop. Alex Gaines right now has put himself out of position for the podium, and Peter Cox trying to find his way round the outside here, and this could be critical for Peter Cox's recovery, but also for how it plays out in the top 5 at the very end as they battle on the brakes. Cox there is going to find himself getting very close to the back of Joel Amos, but he gets it done, and now breaks Gaines into Adelaide and moves up to P6, and Gaines falling backwards for now, but perhaps he's playing the long haul here, and perhaps Gaines knows something that we do not. Because remember, we have seen so far all of our pit stops occur just before the half an hour mark, about 10 to 8 minutes before the half an hour. Are we expecting a lot of our drivers to make one more stop, a third stop today? And could Gaines be the one driver who does not make that final stop? That'll be the question. Does he know something with regards to that fuel load on the car? As meanwhile, we look from him to in the AM class here to Darren Sharples, who right now running a P2 and a comfortable P2 ahead of Eden Frazina by a margin of what is almost 40 seconds. Well, the AM class has broken up staggeringly, and I think it's just as much with regards to the AM drivers having to really manage the other classes coming on through on the lead lap as it is running their own race. And well, McGregor 17 seconds ahead of Sharples, and these two in a world of their own, with McGregor putting a staple even further on there as they make the way on round with just under half an hour remaining. But as they come roaring on through, meanwhile, Håkon Grebstad, well, he's come back out in P3 after his second stop here, and well, Daniel Thomas is the best part of what is there. 11 seconds up the road as they make the way on out, and Grebstad comfortably back in P3, what is effectively, as we understand it, P2 in class, as your race leader right now, as he makes his way into the complex till I see Daniel Lee, the privateer, has yet to take his second stop, but in fact he's in as soon as we say that. Good timing there as he makes one in, and Daniel Thomas goes on to retake the lead of this race, and Thomas is looking to just continue to extend that gap lap after lap, pit stop after pit stop. And for ProTech Motorsport, the Welshman right now doing everything perfectly, but as he makes his way on through it. Meanwhile, Dean Powell here coming across the timing line ahead of Joe Newman and Sam Congreve, and SimRacing continue to stay with him. Where is Matthew Crisp in all this? Well, he's making his way out to the chicane right now. Daniel Leach leaving the pit lane, but he came in quite early on in the pit lane in terms of where he's parked up, so he's going to fall a bit of the way back. Lee leaving the pit lane there as Moles goes on through. Meanwhile, Sean Valendia coming on through, and in fact Lee will re-emerge in P9 when it's all said and done. So the privateer not really gaining in the pits, he's just holding on to his track position at the moment from where all the pit stops started the second time round. But definitely for Lee, it's a long way to go yet, and could he know something as well with regards to strategy that we do not? But as they make the way up towards turn at number 5, I can see a number of you there in the YouTube chat talking about the strategies that are coming up. But meanwhile, battles coming up here. Dean Powell on the outside, Newman up the inside, coming out of Adelaide into Nürburgring, and Powell being offset there. He defends versus Congreve. Congreve tries to sneak it into 180. He can't find it as they make the way out the corner. It's worked for Newman, and Powell now finds himself with a double whammy. It's SimRacing Red trying to make it a 2-for-1 on this lap, but it's only one so far, and Congreve all over the back of the Ferrari driver. He's slithering left to right, and as they make the way from the right into left hand, and right now for Imola, no way through for Congreve, but Joe Newman definitely getting clear, and he's done it at the right time because they make the way through the Chateau hairpin. It does look as though that strategy opened up once again. And if there is one more pit stop in the cards, right now, gaining positions is the most important factor in setting themselves up for success if they have to come in for a short, quick fuel stop later on in this race. But as time trickles on, we do have just 25 minutes and the final lap to consider. All of our drivers here absolutely set for the long haul now, all committed to their strategies, and it's all about how will they intersect right at the very end when that checker flag falls. But Dean Powell losing one place but not both, and Sam Congreve right now trying to go on the offensive still. As they come through the right hand at a turn free for Estoril corner, you can see they're taking a bit more of a conservative approach to the corner. Congreve not trying to overextend, and I think trying to protect the tyres a little bit more, whereas by comparison Powell and Newman absolutely using all the width of the road and then some. But as they come down towards Adelaide, they do have a little bit of traffic there in front of them in the form of what is Ben Watkinson. And again, credit to Watkinson. He has been knocked about, he has been battered, he has been bruised, he has been sent from left to right on this circuit, but he has not given up, and he's running P9 at the moment in the AM class. He is 2 laps off the next driver, Thomas Barjack, but he is still keeping his head in it for RSR, and the privateer here definitely deserves some praise for the simple reason that it has not been a comfortable race for him, but he has not given up at all and enjoying every lap he can turn out there as he lets the battle for P3 in the overall and elite class go on through. But as he makes his way down towards Imola once again, right now just focused on getting to the very end. And meanwhile we look back up to Edward Knight, who is running in P3 in the pro class, and chasing after Eden Frazina there, who's on the inside, and Frazina I think lifting off under blue flags, but Gregor also coming on through, and well, that's going to be feeling a little bit strange I think for Frazina to see the leader of the AMP class come past in there a lap up. But that goes to show how Aaron McGregor has just bought the ultimate tool set today in terms of his driving pace. The Audi that he's got it set up, it is all harmonised together, and the man is absolutely possessed to win here, and by a margin that is only growing versus Sharples up to 17 seconds right now as he presses on. But as our drivers continue on through here, and we do look back to that battle for P3 in the elite class, and overall Joe Newman continues to hold position at the moment, and no threat it would seem from Dean Powell, even though the gap is only 7 tenths. Now as they make their way on down towards turn number 5, in the meantime we do have a bit of an incident involving Jeff Griffiths as we understand it. He's down in what is P37 overall, P10 the pro class. He's gone round recently, the privateer. We take a look back. And in fact, on the run down through the Golf kink there, I think there was a bit of dirt kicked up. I wonder if there's been an incident up the road as he does the same onto the brakes, and will goes incredibly deep there. I think that tap to the dirt may have just unsettled the front end of the car, and as a result had to let the car go extremely deep, and in return stopping the car in time off circuit. But that could have gone a lot worse if he'd gone to the gravel. But Jeff Griffiths definitely mindful of how that played out, as meanwhile we've looked away from that battle for P5, and Sam Congreve, well, that looks as though that's at 180, and he's gone on around. Oh no, and for Ben Watkinson again! For Watkinson, it's all gone wrong, and he just cannot get a break in the BMW driver as he's given another elbow there, and I think trying to find some space, the space was not there for him to find. And the 93 BMW, well, I can tell you one thing, if he's phased right, he's not showing it as he makes his way out to turn 14. But meanwhile, coming back to what happened to Sam Congreve, we'll worry about that in a second, as meanwhile, up his inside there on Alex Gaines, that is Stephen Masters, the elite driver in the Audi on the inside, as they make the way in the run up towards Nürburgring, and as they head down towards the braking zone here for turn number 8, very shortly, coming on 3.7 intake we should say, and his Gaines right now losing time on Joe Amos, but in return again, there's a lot of talking in at the YouTube chat with regards to the fact that Gaines may be trying to go for a 2-stop, whereas most of his class may be going for a 3-stop, and could that potentially upset the apple cart and break things open here, because right now Gaines 18 seconds off the class leader John Eddowes, and will, based on the current rate of knots, that would bring him right back into the hunt at the very end. As our drivers make the way on through into turn number 14. Well, for Masters here, he's just trying to get his way back up through the order. He's currently P20 overall, P12 in the elite class. And his next elite rival to go hunting after is Martin Tilling, who is the best part of what is there 36 seconds up the road from him. So for Masters, it's all about just trying to gain as many overall places and hope that some of his rivals make errors. As Masters is into the pits for his third pit stop, and perhaps this is the sign now that we are going to see one more round of pit stops for the majority rather than the minority, as we look to Nathan Scott, who makes his way down for Estoril corner here. He has got what is there behind him, Peter Cox closing as they make the way through turn number 3, down the Gulf stretch and on towards Adelaide, and Cox is closing like a missile as they roar on through and get ready for the next ever braking zone. Now, of course, Peter Cox at one point was leading in the pro class by considerable margin, but then a mistake combined with a number of incidents that were not necessarily his fault, seeing him chop all the way down to P7 and now really trying to come back at the podium as a minimum here. And well, Nathan Scott is only half a second ahead of him. The next driver up the road is Edward Knight, who is then 5 seconds up the road by comparison. But Cox has got the pace here to be on the podium. He's just got to find the places with the time remaining. Time is still wearing down as they make the way on through 180 and up towards the Imola chicane they go. Meanwhile, Congreve is dropping down the order ever further. Still, he's had an off track recently, but we do see here a flash of lights from Nathan Scott to say thank you to Vizina, but that's going to help Peter Cox. They roar their way on through. A wave of the wipers there for Peter Cox. He looks up the inside, can't quite find it, however, but I think he's threatening and intimidating rather than committing. And as they make the way out to 14, down towards the complex till IC they go. The thing for Cox here is he's going to need to really pressure Scott into a mistake, because I don't think it's just going to come naturally here. I think Scott will have all the cards to play with, given the fact equal machinery, two different drivers, and Peter Cox here definitely a man looking for retribution as they head out of turn 17 and on to the next lap. Now charging across the timeline, the gap opens up to 4 tenths for a brief moment as they make their way through turns 1 and 2, balance to the throttle all the way down and through. Trout breaking it into Estoril, and for Peter Cox here it's about breaking early and getting a tight line, because of course dirty off the car in front will mean that his lines are invoked in a bit of understeer as he heads up towards Adelaide. You can see now losing a temp there for Estoril. He'll get it back in the long run, albeit he's not gaining too much here, so I wonder if there's a bit more rear wing on Peter Cox's car compared to Scott's. He lifts off there and decides to let the car coast on down for 50 metres before breaking at the 100 metre mark, and therefore I think some fuel saving going in here. I think Peter Cox may need to pit again, and so he's getting himself set up to leapfrog as much as he can in terms of time in the pits. But as they head up towards the next chicane, you can see here Cox taking a lot more speed through, but he takes a bit of an aggressive line in 8 and has to lift off in the run through 8 into 9 to avoid the car going deep, but gets so close there to reach out and touch the rear wing of Nathan Scott's car. But as they power out to 10 and up towards Imola they go. Nothing between them. Peter Cox definitely the faster of the two of them, as Martin Tilly is into the pit lane from what we're hearing, from P11 overall and 11th in the elite class. And those pit stops do seem to be creeping in at this late stage in the race, as Cox once again looks to move into the Chateau d'Eu, but he cannot find it. As they make the way out of the hairpin and down towards the next one, those pit stops looming it would seem, and we do keep talking about it, but that's the thing right now. Everything is open season here, and all the places we're looking at and the battles that are coming on through on track, they may have a bigger effect on terms of who finishes where when we put the strategies together. Chris Eddersford here, P2 in the pro class. He has got Edward Knight closing on him, and Knight over the last couple of laps has taken 3 tenths a lap out of the UKSimRacing second place round in the AAA Audi as they make the way down Golf. And as they charge on through now, well, you can see there Knight is closing, and he's closing dramatically as they power their way up towards top gear. Knight's going to be well within attacking zone here as they make the way down. Eddersford defends, Knight goes to the outside, but he carries way too much speed under braking, and Knight gets it stopped there, attack to the codes, but Eddersford defends for now, and well, Eddersford continued to hold the position, and in the end making sure that Knight wasn't able to get it through too much momentum. But for how long will it be before Knight's able to get it stopped correctly into Adelaide and find the move on the outside? As they make the way into 180 here, it could go either way between these two, as meanwhile Nathan Scott and Peter Cox behind, they continue to stay in similar fashion, nose to tail into 180. As they make the way through the long left-hander, we've got more pit stops occurring. We've got Thomas Baljak in from P8, in fact P7 in the AM class. We've also got Ryan Davies in from what was P8 in the elite class and overall. And with these pit stops continuing to arrive, well, now the question will be who could go to the very end. Have they got enough, or will there be a quick splash and dash at the end for everybody, or just for some who have not managed this perfectly? Because of course it will be fine margins. And speaking of fine margins here, as we ride on board the gearbox and Nathan Scott, Simon Racing blue Lamborghini, looking back at the fellow Lamborghini from UKSimRacing and Peter Cox. They come from the complex to IC, and that gap is coming closer as Neil Cox is in, and this really does confirm there is a third stop. I think most of our drivers will have to pit one more time, and now the man you need to watch is this guy, Alex Gaines. Right now, given the pace he is running and the fact he has fallen back down through the pro class order, if my feeling is correct, he is not looking at a third stop. He is doing 2 stops and only 2. That gap between himself and John Eddowes now up to 17 seconds. But the thing for Gaines is his pace is continuing to come on through, and I wonder here if the 77 car is going to pull off the ultimate magic trick when it comes to strategy. We've also got Jack Bullen into the pit, albeit he's been in there for some time. It would seem P10 in the AM class. I think a lot of our drivers here really now coming down to those fine margins on the fuel tank in terms of whether they can make the two-stop work or whether they've got to dive on in. But definitely we are going to see more pit stops before this is over, I can guarantee that. And as Chris Eddersford here continues to hold off Edward Knight, well, that battle will go down to the wire all the way to the very end. As meanwhile, a bit further back, we've also got a rising battle for P5 in the AM class as we transfer over to James Conley here. And here is that battle between Conley and Casper Brotner as they make the way into the Nürburgring chicane. They roll the way on through, and as they make the way up towards 180, you can see Brotner there closing at a rate of knots. Tom Farr is into the pit lane from P8 in the pro class. It is only a 10-second stop, in fact 9.5 seconds to be more precise. It's splash and dash there. I think a lot of drivers having to take on that last little bit of fuel to get them to the very end unscaled fuel capacity, as Conley right now really under pressure of Brotner to push on here. And the Ferrari driver, well, he's had a race that has been one full of drama for all the right reasons in terms of battles for us as a spectator. I think for the 46 privacy, he's not wanted it to play out this way at all as he makes his way up towards the next set of corners. But as he makes his way down the hill in towards turn number 15, coming on down through the chicane straight. Well, Brotner there, but not close enough to threaten. Both drivers here matching one another for pace for the time being as they head on through the chicane once more. But as they come on through, they do have a sizable gap to Michael Warrington, and winner last time out at Monza, and not there today. Albeit you'll notice there, in fact, I think he is still missing the front bumper on that Ferrari. He's not repaired it, so that's from the damage he picked up earlier at the Adelaide hairpin, much earlier on in the race. About 45 minutes in, that damage was picked up, so he's going to be running for practically half, if not more, of the race without a front bumper, and therefore he's going to be getting a lot of drag on the straights. So that absolutely weaken the Ferrari's top end speed, the one thing it's really known for. But as he makes his way around, meanwhile into the pits, and well, there's another signal of those pit stops. Dean Powell coming on in from what was P4 in the elite class and overall. He comes on into the pit lane, and meanwhile Daniel Lee here, the privateer in the 188 Ferrari, continues to charge on behind Sam Congreve, and Congreve's pace is really now starting to drop like a stone as they make their way through 1 and 2, and that's not to besmirch the iRacing Red driver's reputation, but the pace has fallen off. Daniel Lee's going to get a really good run for Estoril here, but the door shuts as Congreve covers him off. But I think the damage has been done as we ride on board with the Ferrari driver here. Can we see him short shift? He does. He upshifts really early to 6th gear. Lee is going for a 2-stop, and I think with this, given the fact he is 39 seconds off of the race leader, will the pit stop time overall, if we're to do a quick bit of mental math, the pit stop time does seem to come out around what is about 20 seconds. That would put him up into the region of a shot at the podium at the end of this race, given that Joe Newman in P3 is 20 seconds up the road. So Lee here will definitely have a chance at top 5, but he won't if he's going to cloud the curve like that, and the car becomes unsettled into Nürburgring, but he brings it back together. But that was close to tears and tatters there for the 188 Ferrari as he makes his way out of 9 into 10. He goes. Aaron McGregor comes out of the pit lane in the AM class. I look out my commentating booth window, and that's going to mix things up as well as Peter Cox there takes the fastest lap of the pro class of a 36.495 after what is a long attempt at going for fastest lap, given his lap time's been so close to it. And with it now, Peter Cox presses on in P7 off screen, but meanwhile Daniel Lee staying close to Congreve, but definitely short shifted as much as he can here. As you can see on the dashboard, he is trying to save that fuel and make it work. Meanwhile, oh goodness me, Edison is round, and Edward Knight's come on through, and I wonder there if the two of them make contact with one another as Edison tries to turn the car around, but he's got a lot of traffic. But we take a look back as they made the way down towards 180, onto the brakes they went. Knight very close behind, and as they came through, Knight there with the contact on the rear, and well, I think then once they touched, there was no way than Chris Edison going on around, and Knight, I don't think he could get the car stopped to prevent what happened from happening. And now it's gone wrong for the UKSimRacing driver, who's dropped from P2 in the pro class all the way down to P5. But in further drama, we've got, I believe, a lot of smoke being kicked up there in the run out turn number 14, and we've got Joel Amos, who's been involved in some sort of incident as we try to find out what's happened to fellow pro driver Amos. Well, coming on through the Imola chicane there, and at the time he was running in a position of what was ahead of gain, so he was running in P3 class and into the wall as the car just clattered on through into the braking zone, and that's a tow to the pits there for Joel Amos in the Symphonic Racing esports machine. And well, it's all happening right now as I think tired arms, tired legs are all coming into effect. Meanwhile, Darren Sharples is into the pit lane, and Aaron McGregor goes on through to retake the lead of this race. But where is Darren Sharples, I hear you ask? Well, he's leaving the pit lane still, and he'll come out behind the leader there. In fact, he's parked up, he missed his pit box and is now waiting there in his pit box once again. So Sharples are taking his time, it would seem. But meanwhile, looking back to Sam Congreve in P6 in the elite class. Behind him is Daniel Lee, who right now looking closer, looking behind. And Congreve, we believe, will be trying to go to the end, but no, he doesn't. In fact, he comes into the pit lane and Daniel Lee is released, and as he makes his way on through, where is Joe Newman? Newman's in the pit lane, he comes on through, and Daniel Lee goes through to take P4 on a 2-stop here. There's still one more pit stop at least, we believe, for Chris, but if not for Grebstad and Thomas as well. So Daniel Lee is coming through the order, and with Newman dropping to P6, Sean Valendia comes on through to P5. We could be seeing a huge shake-up here in the podium of the elite class, and overall, this is all starting to intersect on the strategies, and there is Newman at the rear of the picture. But the thing for Newman is now he could go aggressive all the way to the end, and to give you an idea, his pit time was a total of 32.5 seconds with an 11-second stationary time. So say he's lost approximately at least 25 to 30 seconds. Nobody is safe right now. Well, the only driver who is technically safe from the 2-stopper Daniel Lee is Daniel Thomas, your race leader, because he is 40.5 seconds clear of Lee. But otherwise, Lee is going to pull off a huge jump in the order. He could be finishing P2 at this rate. It is going to be minimal margins come the very end. But right now, Newman, everybody on the free stop will be going all in here to try and come on back. But anything can happen. As meanwhile, Peter Cox goes on through to retake P4 in the pro class here on the free stop versus the free stop of Nathan Scott, who comes out behind him there. Nathan Scott in the Simran Racing Blue Machine. Right now, the two Lamborghini drivers, they've been nip and tuck all the way through the race. And Peter Cox once again finds his way on through as they make the way down towards Adelaide, but Scott now, no, it's all on him to try and make the move happen as they break the way into the turn 5 hairpin. 9 minutes left in this race. There's still plenty of time to go. In terms of the number of laps remaining, it's approximately 5 more laps to be turned, if not a few more. But as they come on through, meanwhile, Chris in the pit lane, he exits on out in the elite class. He's coming in from P3. He rejoins behind Joe Newman as they make the way down. And there's Dean Powell, P7 in the elite class. He comes out just behind Chris. So in the end, all the strategies seem to be confirmed. We're waiting to see if Grebstad or Thomas are going for the ultimate 2-stop, or whether they will have a 3rd stop on the cards. As our drivers roar their way on around right now, everybody is really pushing it, and the one driver who's pushing it more than most is this man in the pro class, Peter Cox. He's in P4, he's chasing down Chris Eddersford as fast as he can. Eddersford is on a 2-stop, we should point out, ladies and gentlemen. He's yet to take his 3rd stop, and well, if he is going to take a 3rd stop, then it'll put him out of contention for the podium, there's no question about it, given the fact that Knight and Eddowes, well, in fact Edward Knight has made a 3rd stop already, and meanwhile John Eddowes has only made 2 stops so far. So could we see the pro class 1 on a 2-stop by 30 seconds by John Eddowes, as Daniel Thomas is into the pit lane from the lead of this race? So that comes into effect, and has Håkon Grebstad pulled off some 2-stop magic as we look to Håkon Grebstad as he makes his way across the timeline. Well, how long is he going to go? Given the pace he's showing here, will it be a miracle from the Motorsport driver? Will it be the master of Monza who now pulls off the miracle of Magny-Cours as he makes his way on through? Daniel Thomas leaves the pit lane, and as he comes on through, he's still got a sizable advantage over Daniel Lee. So that confirms it then, ladies and gentlemen, in terms of the pit stop. Assuming that Grebstad's going to the very end right now, Daniel Lee will be fighting for P3 at the very end of this race, with Sean Valandia behind him also on a 2-stop, and it's Joe Newman who's got to give it everything right now in order to try and finish on that podium at the very end. It's going to be absolutely challenging for every single driver here who is on the free stop, because they've got to give it everything they've got on tyres now that have seen over 80 minutes of driving. I don't think anybody's changed tyres, or if they have, they've split them in the pit lane over the multiple pit stops. But either way, they've got to absolutely push on through. And at this point in the race, when you're being told you've got to give it 100%, it is qualifying laps to the end. As a driver, that is perhaps one of the most painful things to go through, for the simple reason this is where the energy reserves are at their lowest. This is where you find yourself now being pushed through the barrier in terms of what you're able to achieve as a driver, and it's those who can push through that barrier who come away with the big results. John Eddowes here, your pro leader right now, tucked in behind Ryan Davies, and meanwhile ahead of Martin Tilling. And the Tiki Supersport drivers here from all the outfits. The Tiki Supersport Kiwi driver Eddowes just staying in the group, as meanwhile Eddersford is into the pit lane, and that will take him out of any opportunity for podium here today, unless there's any late drama, which means that Peter Cox now retakes P3 in the pro class. And how this comeback from Peter Cox, and he is flying, by the way, to put it in perspective, he is doing high 36s in the pro class. Nobody else other than Edward Knight comes close. But Knight is going 3/10 a lap faster at the moment Peter Cox, meanwhile, is lapping a whole second faster than everybody else in class. He is trying to chase down Knight. I think P3 will be the best he can achieve, leaving Nathan Scott behind at the moment. But as they make the way down for Adelaide, Cox is doing everything in his power to try and get away here and hold on to that final spot on the podium. But as they roar on through, we're still waiting to see what Håkon Grebstad's strategy is going to be. He is your overall and your elite leader, and we talk about him, and here he is. And right now, as he makes his way into Nürburgring chicane once more for the 52nd time of asking, there are 5.5 minutes left after this lap. It will be approximately 3 more laps, including the final lap. And the Norwegian right now, as John Eddowes comes into the pit lane, he has not been able to do the 2-stop. He's gone for a conventional 3-stop, but I think he will be safe, given that Knight is 26 seconds behind. He won't be too compromised by that. But as our drivers make the way on around here, the battles are starting to subside a little bit. But here's Eddowes in the pit lane, and well, what's going to happen as Knight is making his way down through the complex to IC. I think Eddowes is going to be more than safe, because the Knight makes his way out. John Eddowes has already left the pit lane, and there's the confirmation, ladies and gentlemen. The Tiki SimSport Kimi driver is well on his way to picking up his maiden win of the season as he makes his way through Estoril corner here, and Knight is 7 seconds back, and I do not think that Knight has got anything left to challenge this unless Eddowes makes an error of all proportions in the closing stages of this race. But as they make the way around, meanwhile Ryan Davies here under pressure from Martin Tilling, the Tiki SimSport Car Marte driver under pressure from Tilling as they roll the way on through. And they're chased after Sam Congreve in return here, and it has not worked out for Sam Congreve at all in the long term on strategy, as he finds himself at P9 just trying to creep away from the Lamborghini and the McLaren behind. But as they roll the way on through the Imola chicane up towards the Château de Haut hairpin, you can see right now all 3 drivers line to tail as they make the way up towards the complex to IC very shortly. But as they come on through, and meanwhile at the top of the tail there, you'll notice that Håkon Grebstad is losing a second a lap to Daniel Thomas. I think Grebstad is trying to do the 2-stop for the win of this race. We've still got a bit more time to go, but as time wears on, Darren Sharples has been involved in it. He's had to be towed to the pits and what we're hearing, and as the battling continues on, there's still more to go. Crisp in fact has found his way past Joe Newman, and how did that happen, we ask ourselves. We'll take a look back very shortly as they battle down into Adelaide, but Crisp is up into P5 in the elite class, and here is the replay. Well, this was coming out of Estoril, and Newman there catches the car. Well, 10 out of 10 for catching it when it could have gone horrifically wrong, but Chris just sails from the outside there up to P5. Tied arms and legs, but meanwhile we return to live pictures. We look to Sam Congreve. This is a battle for P9 in the elite class, and as they make their way down to Adelaide, Congreve defending here versus Ryan Davies, who tries to go around the outside. Tilling up the inside there, and Tilling looking for the move, but he backs out, respecting the fact that his fellow Car Marte Tiki SimSport driver trying to find the move and also getting back up to speed. Both of the Tiki SimSport drivers will want to try and work together here to gain places themselves. Also given the fact they're in sister teams, there's a little bit of rivalry between them as they make their way down to 180. Congreve continues to hold them at bay for now as they make the way through the long left into the right and king. And as they come on out here, well, there's still more to go as they make the way on through. But meanwhile, further down the order, Nathan Scott is trying to chase after Peter Cox still in the battle for P3. In fact, on the last couple of laps, Nathan Scott has closed back up to Peter Cox. The gap now down to less than a second as they head up towards the Nürburgring chicane. It's all coming down to fine margins right at the end here. A lot of the battles have calmed, but we've still got a couple more to go, and one that's also started to inch ever closer. It's Daniel Lee, who right now in P3 in the elite class, he has jumped all the way up to P3 on the 2-stop, and he's got Sean Valandia behind, who's jumped up to P4, and it's the battle of the 2-stoppers to be on the final step of the elite and overall podium as they make the way under braking it into Adelaide. And Will Lee, I think, is running out of a little bit steam as he goes steep, and Valandia's going to look for the move here, and as they make the way on through, Lee gives the space. Valandia looks up the inside, it gets the move done, and the Tiki SimSport Kimi driver now, where he finds himself into the podium places right at the end here, with an uncharacteristic error from the Ferrari driver of Lee as they make their way through 180, and as they come on out through the left into right here. Will it be the way it finishes, or will there be another spin in the tail? Our race leader, meanwhile, is making his way across the timeline and onto the final lap of today. Håkon Grebstad is going to the end on a 2-stoppers. Here he is. He is 8 seconds clear of Daniel Thomas, and right now he is showing no signs of slowing down. He is going all the way to the very end. It's one more lap to go, and I hate to imagine what the fuel gauge is saying in that McLaren, but we're not going to curse it here as he makes his way for Estoril. One more time under race conditions. It'll be the 55th time as he makes his way down the Gulf Straight. Meanwhile, looking back to the battle for P9 in the elite and overall, we can see here Sam Congreve continuing to keep both Davies and Tillin at bay as they make the way on through Imola and up towards turn number 14. And as they make their way on through, you just see how close the Lamborghini is. As Sean Volandi's had to come into the pits, he's not got enough fuel to go to the very end. So one has fallen there. It's a quick splash and dash. It's literally 4.5 seconds. You see him falling down the timing tower. Meanwhile, Tillin looking around the outside here at Davies, and Congreve trying to force these two to battle one another all the way to the end. But as they come on through the chicane, one more lap for them as they head on through the start-finish straight, and can Congreve keep them at bay one more time around as he heads into turn number 1 as they make the way on through. Well, right now for Congreve, it's all about just placing the car right and getting his two rivals to battle one another as a priority. Until in there, looking up the inside for Esther, he can't quite find it at the moment, but staying very close. As they make the way down the Gulf Straight, we do unfortunately have to cut away, ladies and gentlemen, to Håkon Grebstad, who as he makes his way down into the complex to IC, well, it was the question of the 2 or the 3 stop, and in the end, as he makes his way through the final couple of corners, he's going to prove that the strategy today was the 2 stop. Håkon Grebstad is your winner in the elite class, and overall by 8 seconds in the end over Daniel Thomas, the Indian Motorsport driver, taking the win. And then ProTech Motorsports, Daniel Thomas will come on home to P2 at the line in stellar fashion. We then do have a bit of time before we get our next driver to come on through, our next winner, if you will, to come on through. As they make the way down, I think we've got even more drama right at the end of this race. In fact, Matthew Crisp has been involved in the incident, and in fact there he is off on the circuit, but then Daniel Lee will come through to take P3 in the elite class. He will bring it on home on the podium and on the 2-stop strategy ahead of Joe Newman, who just pips Dean Powell to the line, running on fumes at the very end. And then we do have just behind them, it will be Ryan Moles who crosses the line there, P6, ahead of Sean Volandi at P7, who could not make the 2-stop work today. Matthew Crisp P8 there as it went wrong for Chris Wright, and we'll try and understand what happened very shortly. But meanwhile, we've got more drivers to make the way on through, including Ryan Davies here, P9, ahead of Sam Congreve. Sam Congreve, I think, is in contact with Martin Tillin at the very end, and then John Eddowes will be your next driver to come on down. And well, as Eddowes makes his way on down the hill right now, heading in towards the final couple of corners, I think that BMW has done everything it needs to do right today, and Eddowes has done everything right as he takes his first pro win of the season for Tiki Simsport Kimi there in P12 overall, ahead of Edward Knight, who chased him every step of the way. P2 for Edward Knight, and then Aaron McGregor, your AM winner by 1.5 minutes at the line and almost lapping the entire Anfield as Kukulas just finished the race ahead of him. Peter Cox P3 in the pro class there, Adrian Kukulas P2 in the AM class. You see him parked up there, and a great drive for the privateer, and Eden Frazina P3's already finished his race. But I think most of our drivers have finished their races, ladies and gentlemen. With all the medley, we've had quite a few incidents at the very end of this race, and we take a look back at what happened to Matthew Crisp first and foremost. Was Chris was making his way after Daniel Lee in the run down towards turn number 14. He was very close, and in the end it was just a tiny error for Chris that cost him the chance at a podium right at the finish line. Aaron Chris will be kicking himself for that because it was looking to be a run to the very end versus Lee, but it worked out for him. And then moments after that, there was a coming together between Martin Tillin and Sam Congreve, and as we take a look back at that, they were making their way on down. And in fact, this all started off in the run through what was Adelaide, and this battle went all the way to the line. So 3 wide coming out of Adelaide, in fact, goodness me. And in the reverse Moses of the Tiki Simsport drivers, Tilling on the inside here. This went on for the final lap as we cut away from it, of course, to see Håkon Grebstad across the line to take the overall win. Tilling losing out there. Meanwhile, by comparison, Ryan Davies gaining everything, and then it became a battle between Tilling and Sam Congreve for P10, the last of the top 10 in the elite class. And as they make the way on up towards what was the Imola chicane, as they came down onto the braking zone, rolling their way through on the right into the left-hander. Well, Tilling was all over the back of Congreve, my goodness. So then it was Congreve defending into the Chateau d'Eau, and as they made the way on through, Tilling gets the cutback here. Congreve, of course, with the speed in the Audi, and will trying to squeeze Tilling as much as he could to make sure Tilling had to back out to the outside. Came down the hill, onto the brakes, they went into the complex till IC, and as they made the way down, in the end, well, Congreve over-braking himself and making Tilling go deep. And I think there with the elbows out, Tilling not too impressed with that, and the two tapping one another through what was the chicane until in crossing the line there. But well, that did look a little bit elbows out between the two of them to the very end, but that's how it finished for them. But as we return to live pictures, what a race. And will Daniel Lee, I think he'll be absolutely smiling as he continues to do laps here. And if he's trying to prove a point that he's saved enough fuel to get all the way to the end and do 2 extra laps, he's definitely proven that one as he comes to the line. But as he makes his way through, let's take a look at those race results, subject to any stewards' inquiries. Well, as we do take a look at the results then, ladies and gentlemen, we can see here, looking at our overall results, first and foremost, in round number 4 of the UKSimRacing GT3 League at Season 9, as brought to you today from the Circuit de Nevers Magny-Cours on iRacing. Håkon Grebstad, your overall winner on the 2-stop. Well, in fact, from the 3-stop, as I understand it, I think he has come into the pit since then, so that may have just messed around with our timing slightly. But then Håkon Grebstad getting the job done for Ignium Motorsport by 7.8 seconds over Daniel Thomas, the ProTech Motorsport driver, giving it everything on the 3-stop, but not enough today. Daniel Lee in P3 there on the 2-stop, finishing 32 seconds off the race winner, but I don't think he's going to mind that, given the fact that Lee qualified so far down the order to jump to P3 on the 2-stop. That goes to show how strategy was just as important as pace today. And then Simran Racing Red's Joe Newman P4 ahead of Dean Powell P5. Ryan Moles P6 there, who are battling at P6 for ProTech Motorsport ahead of TE Supersport Kimmy's Sean Valandia P7. Crisp in the end falling to P8 in a disastrous end to his day. Not the way he wanted it to end, given the fact he was hounding Daniel Lee on the final lap, but mistake at turn 14 was the difference. And then Ryan Davies and Martin Tilling completing the top 10. Best of the rest there, P11, Sam Congreve ahead of your pro winner. P12 overall, John Eddowes there for Tiki Simsport Kimmy, and was now focused on our podium finishers in the other classes. Edward Knight in P13 there, P2 in the pro class for Ignium Motorsport Spark, keeping John Eddowes honest all the way to the finish. Aaron McGregor in P14 overall, your AM winner by an entire lap technically over the whole field, and practically lapping Adrian Kukulas, the second place finisher on the finish line. And then Peter Cox, P3 in the pro class there, P15 overall, completing the pro podium for UKSimRacing. We look a bit further down the field, and we will very shortly find ourselves with Adrian Kukulas in P23 there, the privateer, second place in the AM class in a brilliant day today, and a lap ahead of the rest of his peers, including Eden Frazina in P24 overall, the privateer, third place in the AM class. But as we now come on to the individual classes there, and I can see a number of you sending me a message in the chat, and more of that in a brief moment, ladies and gentlemen. We come on to the elite class with regards to Håkon Grebstad taking that emphatic win in the end by 7.8 seconds over Daniel Thomas. And then Daniel Lee in P3, the privateer, doing everything right to bring on home the result ahead of Joe Newman, Dean Powell, Ryan Moles, Sean Valandia, Matthew Crisp, Ryan Davies and Martin Tilling. Best of the rest in the elite, Sam Colgrave, but not the way he wanted his race to go today. And I think in the end, strategy and also a couple of incidents really spoiling what looked to be a potential top 5. Stephen Masters P12, it didn't quite work out for the Tiki Simsport Tower driver either, a lap down at the end, but ahead of Dan at Blackwell, and then Alex Hill P14 ahead of Damien Lobbit, with Damien Lobbit having that early retirement due to issues with the steering wheel on the car. Josh Fletcher with an early retirement as well, P16, ahead of Nathan Foster and Cy Anthony, with Cy Anthony, of course, not participating in this race, just being in race control. Coming on to the pro class, we can see here John Eddowes taking the win in the end by 4.7 seconds over Edward Knight, the Tiki Simsport Kimmy driver, working the strategy and the pace out ahead of the Ignium Motorsport Spark driver, but both of them absolutely close together throughout the race, and it was fine margins that separated them. Peter Cox of UKSimRacing, after what looked to be a race that was on course for victory, being knocked about and recovering to P3, while the UKSimRacing driver showing that tenacity that were doing very well in the second half of the season, finishing 10.5 seconds off the winner. Nathan Scott not on the podium, but P4 for Simran Racing Blue, he'll be pleased with that. And then finishing a lap down, Alex Gaines in P5, the privateer, another strong performance from the BMW M4 driver ahead of Chris Edison of that unfortunate ending to his race when he was looking to be on the podium, but a spin at 180 after a bit of contact saw his dreams dashed. Tom Farr P7 there, the privateer ahead of Joel Amos, and then Jeff Griffiths, Paul Smith completing your top 10. Jakob Boshoff P11 there, and Dion Wren P12, but we did have retirements from, I believe, Jeff Griffiths, Paul Smith, Jakob Boshoff, and Dion Wren in the pro class. And as we come onto the AM class, last but not least, We can see here Aaron McGregor, your winner, the only AM driver to finish on the lead lap ahead of Adrian Kukulis there, a lap down, and then Eden Frazina a further lap down there. But a brilliant top three, all well deserved. And then Casper Brotner P4 off the podium, but the old dudes in cars drivers. Let's just point this out, by the way, we said about it earlier, Casper Brotner came from the very back of the field to finish P4 in class, and that is no mean feat, given the intensity of the AM class's pace. James Connolly P5, the privateer, ahead of Michael Warrington, the Tiki Simsport Car Marte driver, not able to repeat what he was able to do at Monza, but still that P6 will go a long way. Ben Watkinson in a resilient P7 in the end, and remember we said earlier he was never going to be stopped from finishing this race, and then he finished at P7, and that's why you finish races, you stay in them to the end no matter what happens, because Watkinson there get a huge pool of points for staying in it to win it. Darren Sharples P8 with that late retirement, and then Jack Bullen and Thomas Barjack completing your top 10. Thomas Barjack and Jack Bullen both with retirements, we understand it as well. Richard Curie, best of the rest of Team Azor, head of Simon Hartley with Daniel Pays, Frank Klein, Adrian Garcia, Matt Maddox, Mark Johnson and Brock Freites completing your AM finishing positions. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, it is very shortly time for us to come back for our post-race interviews. But what I must say on a very personal level, as I can see many of you there sending me birthday wishes in the YouTube chat, I turned 30 today, and the best way to wrap up my 30th birthday is to bring you this race. A fantastic race, and it's a privilege to bring this for UKSimRacing. And, well, I'll have the privilege very shortly, and thank you all for your very kind messages. It will be a privilege for me to bring you your post-round interviews in approximately 10 minutes' time. We'll be back shortly. You don't want to miss them. We'll see you soon. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, we are back for our post-round interviews with our volunteer drivers. Now, currently, we do have 3 out of 4 of our slots occupied, and we're going to be hearing very shortly from our winner of today on the 2-stop special, and that is Motorsport's Håkon Grebstad in the number 37 McLaren. Really making those results count left, right, and centre, and I'll be interested to hear from the Motorsport driver's perspective just how that strategy played out and what sort of dynamic he had to play through in terms of managing the car. Then we'll be going from him to another elite driver of Daniel Lee in the 188 car, the privateer there, also on the 2-stop, who made his way all the way from P13 on the grid to P3 in the end, before we hear from our dominant AM winner today of Aaron McGregor, the privateer in the 51 Ferrari, who looked absolutely unstoppable out there. But as we do get ready to hear from our race winner today, we're just asking him to join us now. And in fact, as he joins me literally on call, Håkon, congratulations to you to a fantastic drive to victory today. A 2-stop in the making, and it made your day. You must be absolutely pleased with how the strategy played on out.
Yeah, very pleased. It was so uncertain if it was gonna work or not. Like, it was a bit of a toss up whether to save enough to make it on 2 stops or just going for it. Obviously, there wasn't a whole lot in it, as Thomas was only 8 seconds behind in the end.
Well, with there not being too much in it, and of course you were our master of Monza, and now you are the man who pulled off the miracle at Magny-Cours. We dial it all the way back to qualifying firstly. In the qualifying session, it looked extremely tight, but you're able to put yourself right up there, 3rd place on the grid. Was qualifying the way you expected it to be, or was there a bit more time out there?
Yeah, I felt like I got what I could out of my qualifying lap. Obviously, it's probably, like, there's always more time, but it's really hard to find that extra 10th or 2 around here without making a big mistake. Costing more time than it's worth. So yeah, happy to qualify 3rd, and that was probably one of the reasons why I chose my strategy today, like I did, to fuel save, considering I was in 3rd, and yeah, I could just sit there for half of the first stint, saving fuel, and that worked out.
So, with regards to deciding the strategy, and we do have a question from Medmo in the YouTube chat here. He's keen to understand if the 2-stop was always the plan. So, were you basing a 2-stop or a 3-stop depending on how qualifying went, then how the race started as well?
Well, kind of. Like, obviously, if I could just drive away and get like 30-second gap, then that would probably be a better plan. But it was a bit of a toss-up, really. I wasn't sure what to go with. But once I qualified 3rd, it was like, okay, let's try it and see how it goes.
Well, investing in the 2-stop from the outset, Rin, really based on your qualifying performance. We saw at the start of the race, yourself and also your colleagues up the front there of Damien Lobbett and also Daniel Thomas, all gradually starting to inch away from the field within the opening couple of laps. Just take us through running with the pair. We saw for a long time you were the back of the group, and then you started to close up on Lobbett a little bit as he started to have some steering wheel issues.
Yeah, I don't know what was going on. He was having a little bit of issues, going a little bit deep here and there, and all of a sudden made a little big mistake, and I couldn't afford waiting, so I just went and just saved in front of him. I don't know if he's struggled from there on, but he didn't really want to pass again from the looks.
And then transferring it from that into actually executing the race, of finding this place, gaining P2. We saw that Daniel Thomas had broken away to an extent, but you had a lot of clear track. Also, a lot of traffic to work your way through, particularly in the AM class. Were there moments where you started to think to yourself, this 2-stop's not going to play out, where you just sort of, I'm not thinking about that. I'm just going to worry about what does it look like on that final lap?
It was definitely a little bit nerve-wracking, seeing Thomas building the gap more and more and more. But yeah, I think traffic kind of played into my favor, to be honest, because that kind of allowed me to save a little bit more and set up a good pass. So past the lap cars, while Thomas would have been struggling a little bit more to get past them as quickly as possible. So I think that played into my hand a little bit. I also did some calculations and knew whether about like how many laps there were going to be. So I knew like I needed to make 19 laps on one stint, and I managed to do that on my second one. So yeah, 18 laps on the first, and then 19, and then 18 again, and that was enough to get it home.
Well, indeed, a lot of calculations going in as you're driving in the car, and at the same time hammering laps in left, right and centre. And well, that's multitasking at its finest behind the wheel of the McLaren MP412C. I have to ask, lapping around this circuit with all the traffic, with all the incidents, and just also Magny-Cours being such a tricky circuit to get right, how do you keep it pointing in a straight line for 90 minutes in that McLaren? Because you make it look as smooth as butter.
Well, when you're, not going 100%, it might, look a little easier than it is. Obviously, I'm not like going full throttle through some of the corners and coasting a lot and just carrying momentum where I can without spending too much fuel. So that makes it easier. But yeah, it's a tricky track to attack. Doesn't take much of a mistake to really end your race around here.
Oh, indeed. Now, coming onto the pit stops themselves, of course, we saw you come into the pits quite late for that first pit stop, and really it looked as though you were gauging based on the leading pit stops of the free stoppers. But then the second pit stop, just take us through, what was the timing around that? Was that where the fuel started to come in, or was that where a window opened up for you to take that pit stop?
Oh, that was all fuel. I couldn't go another lap. I had to coast a little bit extra the last 2 or 3 laps during my second stint to be able to make the 19 lap work, and I really did, to be able to pull it home on a 2-stopper.
And then going on to that final pit stop with an 8-second gap in pocket as we saw you emerge from the pit lane ahead of Daniel Thomas. Were you thinking to yourself, okay, that's enough for a gap, or was it just don't look at the gap, tell me what the gap is when I've crossed the finish line?
Well, gauging the gap through my second stint, I figured the 8-second would be enough, because he wasn't like pulling away a whole lot. And I wouldn't have to save as much as I did through the second stint, so I was fairly sure as soon as I came out in front with an 8-second lead that I could get it home, as long as I didn't make any mistakes.
Well, it did look as though it was fully in control from start to finish. And just one other question we do have with regards to the tyres out there. We know that the GT3 tyre model has changed considerably going into this season, and tyre degradation has become an increasing factor. How are the tyres around this circuit, which does really abuse those left side tyres in particular?
Yeah, I was a bit surprised after the race, because I did some practice and some testing, and the tire degradation looked to be like, pretty high, to where you'd have to take tires every stop, which I ended up doing. But looking back at the tire wear on my second stop there, I probably didn't have to. But yeah, obviously the fuel and tires are simultaneously now, and yeah, with the fuel limit the way it was, you'd lose about a second or 2 taking all 4 tires. So I figured that was worth it.
It definitely looks as though it worked out quite nicely for yourself in choosing when to go for the fuel and the tyres as well, and managing it all the way to the finish. And well, of course, going into our mid-season break now, you're on a height of 2 wins back-to-back. How are you feeling about your championship campaign aspirations currently, given that you are now P2 in the championship and only what is 6 points off our championship leader?
Oh, well, we'll see how it goes. I do like some of the tracks coming up, especially Bathurst. I'm not sure if the Nürburgring is the Nordschleife or if it's the GP circuit. I'd hope it's the Nordschleife, but probably not.
I hate to torpedo your dreams there. I think it is the Grand Prix circuit, I'm afraid.
Yeah, that's dream shattering. If it was Nordschleife, I'd be super happy. But yeah. Bathurst is one of my favorite tracks, so I'm sure I'll be okay there as long as I don't, put it in the wall.
We'll be interested to see how you get on in the remainder of the season, given you are now growing to be one of the favourites in the championship. And we do have a quick cheeky question from user Vamos Speedy in the YouTube chat asking, when you were fuel saving, was it just coasted off the throttle or clutching in? Try to find out some of your secrets, I think, here.
It's no secret. Yeah, just I was clutching into the hard braking zones, into the hairpin. It was like right before the bridge, I'd put in the clutch, and then basically through this sweepy bit, or the flowy bit, just lifting off and coasting through without even touching the clutch. Because if you're turning a lot and you come off the clutch accidentally, you can end up spinning the car, so it's a bit too risky.
We're using a good amount of the clutch-in technique there, and also managing to keep the car pointing in a straight line at the same time. So a very effective way of fuel saving, and with one of the approaches there teased out from one of our viewers. The next question we do have here, of course, given the fact your championship campaign aspirations, you've talked about the upcoming rounds, and unfortunately it's going to be the Grand Prix circuit next time out at the Nürburgring. Is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out to on the broadcast, Håkon, or give a thank you to?
Oh, I got to shout out everyone in, Ignium Motorsport that raced this with me and cheer me on. It's great to race with them and, do all the preparations and all that. It's good.
Oh, well, they'll be absolutely pleased to hear that, and they'll be absolutely pleased to see you fly the banner high for 2 rounds in a row, taking the win. But with that, congratulations once again on a strategic victory at Magny-Cours, and we do look forward to seeing how high you can rise when we return in 2 weeks' time in Germany.
Cheers.
All the best. So hearing it there from our Ignium Motorsport winner for today, Håkon Grebstad, the elite driver in the McLaren MP4 12C, just finding a way on through. If not for outright pace, it was on strategy in the end, and with a good qualifying session, setting himself up for success straight away with that P3 on the grid, and then all came down to just managing the tyres, managing the fuel, using all the techniques honed and practiced, and making sure never to give up on the true ideal goal at the very end, which was to come out on a clear track and run it to the finish ahead of his closest rivals. And well, right now it is the case that the 37 McLaren driver Håkon Grebstad has announced himself on the scene as one of the big championship contenders in the elite class. And well, I think Daniel Thomas will be looking back at it and thinking, okay, the strategy call wasn't the right one, but at the same time it was one of those closely fought, and if it had gone either way. And to be fair, as Håkon said himself, that it worked out for him when he decided to pit and the traffic really did hurt, it would seem Daniel Thomas by comparison. If it had gone the other way, well, it may have been Daniel Thomas standing on the top step, and it's going to be interesting to see how it evolves between the two of them all the way to conclusion. And I can see Håkon there in the YouTube chat saying happy birthday from the Ignium crew as well. We really do appreciate that. Thank you, Håkon. I do. Well, I'm getting a little bit tearful at the moment, I must be honest, and stumbling over my words. But anyway, as we come on now to our second interview of the day, we come on to our elite driver of Daniel Lee. And, well, as he joins me already in the interview room, straight out the box and in, Danny, absolutely fantastic drive from yourself, and what a way to pull it off. And it wasn't as though you'd started right on the front row either. You had to come from what was in the end the 7th row of the grid to be on the podium. You must be absolutely jumping up and down in joy.
Well, I certainly couldn't have predicted that outcome, considering that this track this week is showing itself to be one of the ones that I just don't like. I cannot attack it. I can't really rip a good qualifying lap out of it at all. I'm well off the pace. So crunching the fuel numbers before the race, I thought, hang on a minute, we might be able to maybe shave 10% off our fuel consumption and work something out, and that was the plan going into it. So I am relieved to just limit the damage, considering Monza last week was supposed to be one of my better rounds and it turned out not to be the case. This was a nice surprise, definitely.
Well, of course, it didn't quite work out in Monza, but it worked out here, but not without challenges in qualifying. Just take us through your session, because we know you as a driver who is very strong on outright pace over the race. We also know that when qualifying doesn't go your way, you find a way to have some race magic. But was it today that the laps just eluded you, or were you just simply not quite on the pace of the rest of the field?
I'm definitely far off a pace for the rest of the field at Magny-Cours. I'm hearing that the Ferrari isn't exactly brilliant here, but then again, sort of de facto teammate of mine, Dean Powell, he stuck up there in 5th, and he out-qualified me by a long, long way. And that just goes to show the car had it. I just didn't have it. So really speaking, when you're in that position, all you can do is say you've got 90 minutes in front of you. I love enduros. I love the consistency that it demands and the stamina it demands, and the tyre kind of kindness that you need to have as well. All those things tend to factor into me coming on strong in the last third of any enduro. I've always done well in a race the longer it goes on. So the track, it's just hard to attack, so I'm not on the pace here. But when you take into account all those factors, it equalised it for me quite nicely.
Oh, indeed. And bringing it into the race itself, we saw from the start you running a very interesting pace in terms of gaining some places early on, and we're seeing right now in the pictures behind, holding off while the Tiki Sim Sport McLarens and also have Ryan Moles behind. You made a lot of ground early on. Was that expected ground, or was it just, okay, I've gained some places, you know, we'll play it out on the strategy?
Initially, the fuel map was still on full, so the engine was full power, and I was looking to just try and not lose any places that I didn't have to, because if you get stuck behind somebody because you decided to fuel save too early, that can scupper the rest of the strategy. So initially, I also needed a benchmark. How much fuel was I burning per lap on a regular map? Once a few laps had gone down, that's when I could calm down a bit, and some people did fall off a track a little bit. I think there was a small collision on the start-finish straight that handed me a few freebies, but also a lot of fresh air. And you want a bit of fresh air when you're trying something different, because you don't want to be harried and hounded. Sean Valandia in the McLaren behind me, it quickly became apparent that he was on maybe looking to do the same strategy, because he was tailing me all the way, but he wasn't attacking. He wasn't looking to overtake. So that also made me feel a bit more comfortable. Wasn't too worried about him, but it just needed to play out over the 90 minutes. So yeah, early on you've got to defend your patch, but once you're in the groove, that's when you can sort of switch into whatever strategy you're deciding to do.
Oh, indeed, and switching into that strategy once things had settled down. We rode on board you at a couple of points in the race, and we saw quite a bit of short shifting going in, also some lift and coast, really bringing out all the fuel saving techniques that we come to know and love. Was there also a bit of clutch dumping going in there?
No, as it happens, partly because I'm not currently using a button plate with a clutch paddle, so it's actually one of the sort of thumb dials that's mapped to it, and I also don't like that anyway. I think it sort of unsettles me more. I lose more by doing that because it puts me off as a person than it saves fuel. So really, the only way you can offset it that even comes close to a clutch dip is just by sticking it into sixth gear, because it's only really the high-speed stuff where you're going to save fuel. So no clutch dipping. You'll be the purists will be glad to hear that. And it seemed to work. The fuel map was turned down to 6 out of 12. If you go past 8, that's basically a safety car map. So 6 is quite choking on the engine, and in actual fact, it made it a lot more drivable. Coming out of corners, especially the slow ones in second gear, it actually made the car a joy to drive. So I actually preferred the coasting laps than the full power laps.
Oh, goodness me, and that worked out a dream as a result then, having a lot of comfort on the fuel saving mode and therefore being really able to maximise that lap time. Now, of course, as the race went on, we saw you creeping up the order, albeit waiting to see how the strategies weave together. Were there any points in the race where you started to get those doubts that sometimes come in terms of, have I done it right on the two-stop? And also, what about the tyres? How did the tyres evolve over the race? Because we know the Ferrari can be quite aggressive to tyre compound.
The reverse kind of happened for some reason. Early on, when the pack of cars, maybe first to eighth, they were putting a big gap between me and them. You know, you're seeing it increase 4 seconds between me and eighth, 5 seconds between me and eighth. You're starting to think, if this carries on over 90 minutes, how far back am I going to be from these guys? But as each pit stop ticked over, and I saw people's names come down the order, and I was leapfrogging them, knowing that I was likely to cut that last pit stop out altogether, the hope only built, really. And it was just a nice feeling to feel as though trying something different was actually going to work out this time. So yeah, it got better the longer it went on. And the same to some degree with the tyres. They were always maybe 7 or 8 degrees cooler than they would normally be on a full attack lap. So they didn't wear down as much. I think there was probably about 30% life in them when I crossed the line at the very end, which is getting a bit ropey, but it's still plenty. The car was pretty balanced all the way through. It was only actually the last handful of laps where the fuel wick was turned up again, the engine was given full power. That's when it actually felt uncomfortable. So yeah, it was a really nice balanced car from start to end.
It did look very comfortable, and well, we'll come on to the very end of the race, because I do have a bone to pick and a question to ask you right at the end. But before that, emerging from the pit lane from your second pit stop and seeing yourself in P3, just take us through that final stint, because we saw Matthew Crisp come roaring up to the back of you and then get it all wrong at the very last couple of corners.
Yeah, but it really saved the it saved the wobbles till the last. I overshot the hairpin, which gave Sean Valandier the place in front of me. It looked like I'd lost a place to him, which was going to be a bit gutting after working so hard for it. But then he lifted off in a major way just before the white flag fell, and then he turned into the pits. So there you go. That's a lucky escape and a free gift. But then Matthew Crisp, as you say, he came flying up behind me, and I'm thinking, if I don't mess anything up, I'll be fine. But it was still close. He was within a second of me coming down the last sector, and for some reason, somehow, I saw a few little pixels in the rear view mirror just facing the wrong way, and that was the last little gift that this race gave to me. I could relax then and just coast it through the last few corners, slice it through that chicane, and cross the line safely in third, which was definitely not on the cards tonight.
Well, crossing the line in third and looking calm, cool and collected as you did so, and not wilting under the pressure. Now, the question I have to ask, how much fuel was in that Ferrari when you crossed the finish line? Because when we were getting ready to go through the results, we saw you going round there for a couple of extra laps.
Yeah, there was enough fuel in the tank for like a cool down lap, and then a flying lap. I guess I just felt like I owed it to the Ferrari. It had done such a good job with conserving fuel, and there was enough there to do like a sort of a victory lap, just to rub it in, because that strategy was just so cheesy, and it shouldn't have worked so well, but it really did. So I'm going to look back on this race fondly. It was brilliant.
Well, it was absolutely superb from yourself. And cool down laps aside, and as you cool down now and get ready for the mid-season break, going into the break, you're in P3 in the elite class on 62 points, 10 points off of the top two, but at the same time 4 points clear of P4 Joe Newman. How do you feel your championship has gone so far, and what are your thoughts going into the second half?
It started pretty strong. I definitely am hoping that the second half goes better. There are some good tracks in there. Sebring again is a favourite of mine, and it's an endurance round, so I've got high hopes for that one. But whenever that happens, it usually swings the other way. So I'm going to try not to be too excited about it. Håkon, sorry, I don't know how to pronounce his name. I'll need to ask him. And Daniel Thomas, they just seem to be that little bit too far. I can't really touch them at this point in time, so I'm going to have to come back from the mid-season break hitting hard. I need to sort of prove that if I am going to win this championship, I actually deserve it, and it's not just because of circumstance. I need to fight them one-on-one to really make it clear that I'm after it. So hopefully we come back and it's a good battle from in the last 4 rounds.
Well, we do look forward to seeing if you can bring that pace up and bring that battle to bear, because it'd be good to see a three-way fight for the championship all the way to the end. But just before we do let you go, of course, Danny, is there anybody you'd like to say thank you to or give a shout out to on the broadcast this evening?
Only yourself. Happy birthday. I hope you had a great day, and I hope that this has been the icing on the cake. We've enjoyed it, so thank you for doing such a good job, and happy birthday to you.
Well, thank you very much. It definitely has been the icing. I'm not going to lie, one of the best races I've ever seen in the endurance category on iRacing. It's been a privilege to cover it, and to see you make it work on the two-stop, well, for yourself it's a dream come true, and well, it's a miracle come true for me to witness.
A pleasure. Thank you.
All the best. So hearing there from Daniel Lee, the elite driver, the privateer, bringing on home P3 in the end, having started P13. And in his own words, admitting that it didn't quite work out in qualifying, and in the end in qualifying, it's just the difference in pace. He didn't have the pace in qualifying, plus also the Ferrari not looking that strong at Magny-Cours. But where he had no strength in qualifying per se, he decided to go all in on the two-stop with short shifting, and also it was in the end the usage of fuel maps, no clutch dumping, and in return he made it work. Also, with the lower fuel map and having to short shift, it meant he was able to preserve the tyres longer and therefore run the car all the way from start to finish on a fuel tank which could last longer than most, and bring it across the line in P3. And the consistency delivered and the smoothness of the driving, enjoying being that lower fuel map, then he had a car at his fingertips that was never going to step astray, but instead lead him on his way to success. Of course, there are a couple of fortunate moments, including Sean Valandia, who took P3 but had to go into the pits, being 1 lap off of the finish in terms of fuel and wasn't quite able to make it. And then Matthew Crisp's mistake, of course, at the Chateau d'Eau at turn number 14 on the final lap, undermining what could have been a chance for a podium from the fellow privateer of Crisp. But still, with Daniel Lee right now, definitely showing his credentials as an outsider in the championship campaign. If he can find that final 10% in terms of pace, there's no reason why he could not be our third belligerent for the elite crown come the end of the season when we return in 2 weeks' time. But having borne witness to Daniel Lee's driving out of the circuit in the background and had a chance to interview him, we now move on to our third and final interviewee of the day, and that is none other than Aaron McGregor, who now joins me in the interview room. Aaron, firstly, the only AM driver to finish on the lead lap. That is a statement in of itself, and then to take the win by such a staggering margin. I mean, how do you describe it from your perspective? You were flawless tonight.
Well, first of all, happy birthday to yourself, obviously. Hope you've enjoyed the race. But yeah, I was quite close. I nearly got lapped right at the end, but just stayed on the lead lap, which was good for me. Yeah, pace was alright. Yeah, overall I'm quite happy with the result.
Well, dialing it all the way back to being, and thank you for the birthday wishes. Qualifying looked to be very on form, a P22 overall, a couple of places clear of your adversaries in class. Do you feel as though you managed to find all the lap time you wanted, or was there a little bit more out there despite the pole lap?
Yeah, funnily enough, I had a horrible qualifying session actually. The first lap, that was my first lap, was my quickest. And then second lap, I binned it at turn 2. The third lap, I hit the final curb and the final chicane too hard, so crossed the line the wrong way. So again, I had to abandon that one. So I had one last lap, was 3/10 up, and then spun. So yeah, qualifying's definitely some work to do moving forward.
Well, despite there being some work to do in qualifying and that one lap being enough to give you pole, start of the race was interesting. We saw you, of course, with a number of pros between yourself and your AM peers, but after about 3 laps, all of the pros had got past you, and now you had the AMs behind you. Was that the way you expected the race to go? What happened on those opening laps?
Well, I'm not sure if you've seen on stream, but I think at the end of lap, must have been the end of lap 2 or 3, there was an incident at the final chicane just in front of me, so I had to cut the chicane, otherwise I would have went in too wide. So I cut it, and then there was 2 cars lying in front of me. I had to slam on the brakes, hit one of them, which gave me 1 minute and 5 seconds repairs as well, so that wasn't great. But yeah, that's why I dropped the positions.
Indeed, now that you mention it, I do recall we did have a look at that incident and seen you having to plough your way through the scene of the incident, a bit of a knock. And with regards to that damage, you still managed to maintain the lead and the pace. The damage you picked up, how was it affecting the car over that first stint?
It didn't affect the handling of the car. It handled pretty well still. It must have been straight line speed because it felt pretty stable, but the pace wasn't great. I was stuck in a bit of traffic as well, trying to make my way through. But yeah, I think it must have been straight line speed that I think that impacted the most.
Well, that was unfortunate. Now, with that incident, of course, and you're still leading in the class, did that change up your strategy from the planned free stop, or did you always want to commit to that free stop?
I don't think in the Audi we'd done a wee bit in testing, just trying to feel safe to see if it was possible to 2-stop, but I don't think it was in that car. It would have been, I would have had to try and save quite a bit more than I was. So I just thought it's probably not worth it. Better to try and attack the race and 3-stop instead of running out of fuel again like I did in the last race.
When going through that route, and of course that unfortunate moment, Monza, where you ran out of fuel right towards the end, but it wasn't to be that way today. We saw further down the AM class where your peers were being lapped. There was a bit of coming together between Pro, Elite and AM drivers, and a number of them being given the elbow out on circuit, but you finding a way to steer clear of all the drama and trouble where possible by putting in lap after lap. Just take us through from your perspective, when you're racing for 90 minutes around Magny-Cours, a circuit that really does not take prisoners when it comes to mistakes. What keeps you pointing the right way, keeps the pace high, and also managing that strategy and making sure not to run out of fuel? Because it's such a multitasking activity from start to finish.
Yeah, well, I think the worst thing is you don't get really a second to think around here. It's so tough other than the back straight. There's constantly, high speed down to low speed, chicanes, bumps that can easily spin you over. So it's tough, but you need to get in a kind of decent rhythm. If you're in a pack of cars, it's important not to be too aggressive. Maybe I was at some point, but you just need to. Yeah, you can't really drive 100% around here. A number of the drivers have said that you can't really attack at 100%. It's definitely the case, because if you do that, you know, it's going to be a couple of laps and you'll spin somewhere, or you know, something like that. So yeah, it's definitely a tough one.
Well, we saw you manage the difficult challenge with aplomb, and as you made your way on through over the course of stints, we saw a couple of moments where you found yourself sandwiched in amongst some pro and elite drivers there. And was there a little bit of urge potentially to battle them, or just try and make it a bit more difficult for them to gain position, or was it, no, I'm not racing them, just let them on by?
I did want to try and battle my way through as much as I could and as far up as I could, but there were certain points where I did kind of think, you know what, it's not worth it. It's a double points round, so it's probably better for me just to try and sit in. I felt like my pace was good. Obviously, I was a bit frustrated with the incident early on. It kind of put me back, so it was a bit of both. I did want to kind of press on, see how far up I could finish, but yeah, sometimes I just had to kind of admit defeat and just stay behind.
We're still finishing at P14 come the end, whilst you did have to let some places go at a brilliant finishing position, all said and done. And of course, bringing it to the very end on a free stop, very calm, collected, and this result has now put you back in control of the AM Championship by 3 points over Casper Brockner. How are you feeling given your championship campaign so far, and what are you thinking about the next 4 rounds when we return in Germany in 2 weeks' time?
I think it's been a pretty strong start. I didn't actually, it's my first season with UKSR, so I didn't really know what to expect. It's been a lot more competitive than I thought it would be, and this week in particular I've put quite a bit more practice in than I usually would. So I think I've had a look at it. I think the top 4 are all pretty close together, so just take it one round at a time. Obviously we've got the drop week to play with as well, so yeah, we'll see where we finish.
Well, indeed, with only 9 points separating yourself as leader from Casper Brockner, Adrian Kukulis and Michael Warrington, it's all open at the moment. And we're looking ahead to those 4 rounds. We do return in Germany. The Nürburgring Grand Prix circuit lurks in wait. Is it a circuit you enjoy?
Not at all. Not at all. I used to do the 4-hour VLN races round it was kind of the combined Nürburgring, and I just really struggled around the GP part of the track. I don't know what it is. And I'm going to be participating in the Bathurst 12 hours as well on the same weekend, so in terms of practice I'm not sure how much I'm going to be able to get in. So yeah, I don't know, we'll see what I can do,
It's definitely going to be a challenging weekend upon your return, but one I'm sure you'll rise to. But at the same time, Aaron, now our double winner in the AM class, the first repeat winner of the season in the AMs. Just before we do let you go, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out to or a thank you to live on the broadcast this evening?
Yeah, I'll give a thank you to my good friend Ryan Moles, who's in the league, who introduced me to the league, who's I've taken a couple of years out actually of sim racing, so Silverstone was my first race in about 9 months. So yeah, I'll give a thanks to him. We've put a good bit of practice in this week. We've done the VRS endurance race yesterday, so yeah, his guidance, obviously he's improved a lot over the last year, so yeah, his guidance has kind of helped me as well.
I'm sure Ryan will appreciate the shout out, but as ever, Aaron, it's been a pleasure to have you in the interview room. Congratulations once again on an emphatic win today, and we'll enjoy the break, and we look forward to seeing you back on the tarmac in 2 weeks' time.
Thank you very much.
All the best. So hearing it there from our last interviewee of today, the number 51 Audi driver of Aaron McGregor in the AM Privateer machine. And his own words, they're really focusing on delivering lap after lap, whether it be in qualifying or alternatively in the race. But very interested to hear with regards to that pole lap in the AM class and in the qualifying session being his first flying lap, with the others not working out and really having to make it count on the very first one. But even though he took pole by 4 attempts in the end, also wanting to improve even further. And as a driver, that's always the way. If you feel as though you've dropped a tenth or two, even if it's good enough for pole, in the back of the mind, you do think to yourself, but there was an extra tenth out there, could have even been faster, but not letting it upset him. Instead, using it as a means to push forward in the race. And despite the damage that we did see him pick up in that instant at the chicane on the opening couple of laps, it never quite quite phased him, and he went on to take the win in the AM class and holding on to the end to finish on the lead lap and be the sole AM individual to do so. Definitely a day of dominance for the privateer of Aaron McGregor, and when he does return at the Nürburgring Grand Prix circuit, well, I think he's going to have to balance his priorities with the Bathurst race, the 12 Hours of Bathurst, plus also round number 5. I'm sure he'll find that balance and he'll continue on strong in an AM class that has finally seen its first repeat winner, but it does have a top 4 that right now is looking absolutely inseparable when it all comes down to those fine margins. But as we now conclude our interviews for today, you've just heard from Aaron McGregor, our privateer there in the AM class. You also previously heard from the 188 privateer of Daniel Lee, or Danny Lee as he's also known, in the elite class in the Ferrari, and also you got to hear from Håkon Grebstad, the Ignium Motorsport McLaren driver in the 37 car in the elite class, who pulled off the strategic masterclass today to back up the mastery of Monza last time out. But with that, that concludes our post-round interviews, and now it's time, of course, for us to give you an update on the championship standing subject to stewards' inquiries going into the mid-season break. And so without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, we start off with the elite standings here, and we can see at the very top, leading by 6 points. Keep in mind, of course, now we do have drop scores in effect, and you'll see the ones with strike through text or a line through them to indicate the drop scores on the sprint race rounds. And with today's round, the endurance round being a double points round as well, we can see that Daniel Thomas leading the way by 6 points for ProTech Motorsport over Håkon Grebstad from Ignium Motorsport. Grebstad has now jumped into P2, holding a strong advantage there over Daniel Lee. It looks like it's going the way of a top 2 battle in the championship, but as Daniel Lee said himself earlier, if he can find those ingredients to get that pace to be on point versus Grebstad and Thomas, there is no reason why he can't be up there as well and battling to make it a 3-wide championship. But if we were to say that, then we'd also be discrediting Joe Newman, the Simran Racing Red Machine there in P4, only a further 4 points behind and holding a 10-point advantage over fellow ProTech Motorsport driver Ryan Moles, who completes our top 5. Looking on further down, outside the top 5, Dean Powell making himself felt today, albeit not quite working out unlike his colleague Daniel Lee, but still P6 there and continuing to rise through the ranks, with Sam Congreve in P7. Not his day today and was hoping for a better result, but short on his return, he'll definitely be trying to hammer those results home for Simran Racing Red. And then we have the 3 priorities of Josh Fletcher, Cy Anti and Matthew Crisp completing our top 10. Then best of the rest there is Sean Valendia, who lost out on a P3 today, which would have really sealed the deal in terms of jumping in right up in the championship standings. But keep your eyes out for the Tiki Simsport Kimi driver, because I reckon in the McLaren he's going to be coming back fast and hitting hard on those results in the final 4 rounds of this season, as he sits ahead of Damien Lobbit there with that unfortunate retirement costing him extremely dear in P12 for Symphony Esports Black. And then we have Joshua Pratt, Dan Blackwell and Martin Tilling completing the top 15. Outside the top 15, not to be forgotten about, Jacko Taylor, Ryan Davies, Nathan Foster, Alexander Hill and Sam Shaw completing the top 20, with Austin William Campbell, Stephen Masters and Cameron Hawes completing the Elite Championship standings. Now coming on to the Pro class, we can see here that John Eddowes leads the way after 4 rounds by a margin there of only 5 points over Edward Knight. The Tiki Simsport Kimi driver continued to soar high, and unfortunately we weren't able to hear from him in our post-round interviews. We would have loved to have heard his perspective, but unavailable. I think emotions may be very strong at the moment, given bringing home his first win in the series. And well, with that, right now he's going to be absolutely jumping up and down, enjoy it, given the fact he's leading the way, albeit not by a huge margin, and he's going to have the rivalry of Knight and Peter Cox there, with the Ignium Motorsport Spa and UKSimRacing drivers respectively, all vying for the crown. But with Knight only 5 points behind and 4 clear of Peter Cox, the UKSimRacing driver will know that today wasn't his day to bring home a win, but he's definitely on form now and a potential race winner from round to round. Alex Gaines has dropped to P4 there, but don't rule him out either, given the fact he's only 2 points off of the top 3. And the one thing we can always count on the privateer in the BMW M4 is that even if he doesn't have a strong qualifying session, he finds a way to threaten the podium every race. But can Gaines put the fears and the qualms of qualifying behind him and get himself on pole in a couple of races? And if he does so, I think he could turn that championship around. In P5, Nathan Scott there for Simam Racing Blue on 62 points, also moved out only a further point behind. And then we do have a 22-point gap to Chris Eddersfield in P6, who, given the circumstances, would be much closer if it wouldn't have played out the way it did today with that spin late on in the race. Tom Farr in P7 continues to show that resilience is giving him benefits on 26 points there and ahead of Jeff Griffiths by 2 points. points. 1 point extra clear of Joel Amos there in P9 and David Larson in P10, completing our top 10 with the two Symphony Esports white drives completing P9 and P10. Best of the rest, Paul Smith there, P11, the Ignium Motorsport driver, great qualifying that putting on pole, but it didn't work out today in the race ahead of Jeko Boshov, his fellow Ignium Motorsport Spark driver, and then we do have Mark Collicott, Martin Fernie and Daniel Merchant in the run to P15, ahead of Colin Patterson, Stuart Brown, Dion Wren, Ollie Pimley and Darren Fellows. Now as we come onto the AM classification, we can see that Aaron McGregor leading the way by a margin of only 3 points. And our first repeat winner in the AM class. And if you look across the standings there, what's the thing you'll see most? It is that nobody right now has established a consistent championship run. Each driver here inside what is effectively a very close-knit top 6 has had trials and tribulations as well as success stories to say, and therefore it does look as though right now we are waiting for the one driver in the AM class to really start to put that run of results together. McGregor looks the favourite to do so, given his performance today, but of course it could all turn tail in 2 weeks' time with Casper Rottner, the old dudes in cars driver, jumping into P2 with a great performance going all the way from the back of the field and moving himself up to P2 as a result, and then only a 2 points behind him is Adrian Kukulis with a second place today, really giving him the benefit and bringing him up forward in the standings. And then Michael Warrington, the winner of Monza, but it didn't work out here, but still staying in the hunt for Tiki Simsport Car Marte to bring home the position and get himself into P4. The same for Eden Frazina and the same for Darren Sharples there. Two drivers who cannot be counted out. And so the 13-point gap separating the top 6, I don't think is going to go away. It's only here to stay. James Conley, a further 15 points off, continuing to battle to just break away from the midfield. And the Ferrari driver showing great strength once again. Ahead of Ben Watkinson, the driver who's in it to win it, no matter what, and moves up to P8 there with a great result. Ahead of Mark Johnson and Brock Thrates, two drivers who did not have the day they wanted today in France. Best of the rest there outside the top 10, Daniel Pays, the old dudes in cars driver, again having a difficult day. Ahead of Matt Maddox, Thomas Barjuk, Ryan Gonzalez and Jack Bullen, and then completing our AM stands, Frank Klein, Simon Hartley, Richard Curie and Adri Garcia. But as we then come onto our team's championship stands, last but not least, we can see that after 4 rounds, it is ProTech Motorsport who lead the way by only 15 points over UKSimRacing. The margins could not be finer between these two teams. They are exchanging points of its stocks on the trading floor, and with Tiki Simsport Kimi there a further what is approximately 19 points behind, you would imagine now that the top 2 will try to edge away and Tiki Simsport Kimi will want to stay in touch. Simran Racing Red, meanwhile, P4 there with a gap of what is 16 points off of the top 3, and they continue to try and fly high, albeit they've got the contest of Tiki Simsport Car Marte and Ignium Motorsport. They're both 2 points behind, with Ignium Motorsport behind based on result countback, and then Ignium Motorsport Spark in P7 only a further point behind, with a further 2 points to Old Dudes in Cars, a further point to Simran Racing Blue, and that is where we can see at the midfield inside the top 10 in the team standings continues to be ever close. Symphony Esports White on 43 points, they complete the top 10 outside of the battle for the top 9. Currently by a margin of 27 points, but they do have 6 points over Tiki Simsport in P11, who have also got their sister teams of Tiki Simsport Tire and Tiki Simsport Copper, who make the run to P13, with Symphony Esports Black in P14, BDM Racing 15th, and then last but not least, Team Zor, who continue to try and battle their way up through the standings. But with the standings covered, ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have enjoyed today's broadcast and you want to know more about the UK sim racing community in terms of the leagues and series we run, alternatively the work we do outside of sim racing and everything in between, well, why not firstly head to our website. You saw that earlier pop up on screen, and that's uksimracing.co.uk. Alternatively, if you want to go to one of our social media platforms, you can of course go to our official Twitter, twitter.com/UKSimRacing_. Also, a big thank you to our affiliates, Swello Meadow Sim Racing Coaching first and foremost there, the YouTube address on screen, and Swello Meadow, one of the premier sim racing coaches on iRacing in particular, due to the fact he's a multi-champion in official iRacing series, including the 2021 Porsche Cup Series. But on top of that as well, he is a coach that takes a different approach. Whereas many will tell you that you need to improve 101 things on your driving, Swello Meadow will break it down into the 3 most important things based on what you're looking to achieve from the coaching session and get you to prioritise on those first and foremost. On top of that as well, we have Race Anywhere, raceanywhere.co.uk, which is the provider of a curated sim racing equipment aiming to only stock products that represent excellent value for the sim racing community. We also have Demon Tweaks there, their web address demon-tweaks.com, the provider of the most complete and innovative motorsport product range available worldwide. So no matter what your level of discipline, Demon Tweaks could help drive you to realise your motorsport ambitions. And then last but not least, we have Amazon. Their web address, amazon.co.uk, and they're the company striving to be the Earth's most customer-centric company, the Earth's best employer, and the Earth's safest place to work through the provision of concepts pioneered by Amazon, including but not limited to Amazon Alexa, Fire TV, and Fire tablets. But speaking of fire, ladies and gentlemen, while our drivers will right now be letting the fire calm down a little bit, they'll be cooling off on the week's break, but we will be back for round number 5 in 2 weeks' time on Sunday, the 12th of February, 2023. We'll be heading to the Nürburgring Grand Prix Strecker circuit, and whilst we won't be racing all the way through the Eiffel Mountains, we'll be racing on the tarmac at the foothills of the Eiffel Mountains, and we'll get it all back underway with what is our 4th sprint race of the season. Our championship leaders make their way into the break with the momentum on their side, but when they come out to the other end, will they still have the momentum on their way, or will they find themselves falling back into the mix of the championship battles? Well, all that and more, we'll find out then. But until then, thank you very much for watching, and if you have enjoyed today, why not subscribe to the UK Sim Racing YouTube channel to stay in touch with all of our latest broadcasts. But until then, we have been UK Sim Racing. I've been your host and commentator, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain Spit. And until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, remember to stay on track. Good night.